Without a doubt, this master is exceptionally competent. He has bestowed upon him the profound heart sutra cultivated to the pinnacle of quasi-sainthood, the method of severing the three corpses leading to sanctification. And now, even the fragment of the primordial jade disc that has enabled Hongjun's own achievements. These gestures far surpass the so-called master-disciple bonds of his previous life. With this resolve, he silently vowed to be a good disciple. Very well, go fetch Hoodoo. I shall assist you in tidying up this mess, and then we shall commence. Hongjun waved his hand, exuding an aura of authority befitting a Dao ancestor. Tong Yi, filled with admiration, exited the grand hall, promptly retrieving his jade pendant to send a message. Hello? Hoodoo, hurry over. I've resolved your matter. Chapter 22. 9 is the ultimate number. Did Emperor Jun and Tai Yi intercept the entrance to chaos? Hoodoo, I've taken care of your affairs. You must have seen the radiance of the Zixiao Palace, right? Quickly come over. I've arranged for one-on-one guidance from a sage. In the southern region of the 33rd heaven, Hoodoo was currently bathing in a hot spring. Suddenly, the jade talisman hanging around her neck emitted Tong Yi's voice. Hoodoo was momentarily taken aback, then filled with joy. Since their last parting, she had been awaiting news from Tong Yi, lingering in the 33rd heaven. When the majestic figure of Hongjun cast its shadow upon the heavens, Hoodoo was filled with excitement. This was because Tong Yi had once told her that as soon as the Dao ancestor emerged from seclusion, he would seek an audience for her. Thus, even with the guidance from the Purple Cloud Palace now apparent, Hoodoo remained unhurried. She possessed unwavering faith that Tong Yi would orchestrate everything perfectly for her. Rushing would be inappropriate. Additionally, she feared that meeting the Dao ancestor without proper decorum would lead to embarrassment, prompting her to find this hot spring for a bath and change of attire. Unexpectedly, Tong Yi's message indeed arrived. Thank you, Dao friend Hun Yuan. I shall come at once. Hoodoo joyfully responded, her exquisite form springing forth from the hot spring. As she landed, she was already clad in a gown of delicate yellow. Without a moment's hesitation, she leaped onto the enormous yellow bird, guiding it toward the chaotic entrance in the central region. Brother, is it truly impossible to locate Kuan and the Luo book? Could that old fellow have absconded with your Luo book? I always felt he was unreliable. I should have entered the chaos myself. We've been waiting here for so long, and no one has entered or exited the chaos. Where on earth could he be? Beneath the chaotic entrance in the 33rd heaven, Tai Yi was in a state of anxiety and fury, pacing beside Di Jun, his words filled with avian charm. Di Jun, on the other hand, sat cross-legged on the ground, holding the He-Tu, his eyes tightly shut as he continuously deduced. The time that Kuan Peng had vanished into chaos was mirrored by the duration they had been stationed here. Initially, they believed that Kuan Peng would swiftly drive the monkey and the colorful girl from the chaos. Yet, what transpired? Not long after Kuan Peng entered the chaos, Di Jun sensed the connection to the Luo book abruptly sever. In that moment, regret washed over Di Jun. It is vital to understand that the He-Tu and Luo book were his innate treasures. The He-Tu could divine the celestial bodies, while the Luo book could elucidate the geography of mountains and rivers. With the blessing of the He-Tu and Luo book, Di Jun's comprehension of the Tao had flourished, making them his most treasured possessions. Though he had lent them to Kuan Peng, he had merely granted limited permissions. The true owner of the Luo book remained Di Jun. Yet now, that connection was lost. It felt as though the very threads of fate binding him to the Luo book had been severed. In that instant, panic surged within Di Jun, awakening him to the realization that his reason had been clouded by the influence of the celestial measuring ruler. He should never have lent the Luo book to Kuan Peng. Thus, he began to consult the He-Tu repeatedly, striving to deduce the whereabouts of the Luo book. After all, the He-Tu and Luo book were intrinsically linked. Logically, even if one entered the chaotic realm of disorder, and even if the imprint of the Luo book's host was erased, the He-Tu should still be able to trace the Luo book's location. Yet, what was the reality? So much time had passed. He sat cross-legged beneath the entrance of chaos, engaging in countless deductions, yet still failed to uncover the whereabouts of the two. It was as if they had been erased from existence, vanishing in an instant. This left Emperor Jun profoundly dissatisfied, yet he could do nothing but repeat his calculations, each attempt leading to failure, each failure prompting further attempts. Where could that monkey have gone? Why had it not emerged yet? What predicament had Master Kuan encountered? At that moment, hearing Tai Yi's anxious voice, Emperor Jun opened his eyes. His originally golden, enchanting eyes were now filled with blood and fatigue. Divination and deduction were inherently defiant acts against heaven, not to mention the immense toll exacted from his repeated efforts. Master Kuan was not the kind of person to falter. Emperor Jun shot Tai Yi a fierce glare, reprimanding him sharply. At times, he truly felt the urge to strike his younger brother. What could he do besides incite anxiety? Upon hearing this, Tai Yi, who had always feared his elder brother, immediately fell silent, awkwardly asking, "What shall we do next?" The Sage's domain was unexpectedly located in the chaos, and the number of formidable beings entering the chaos would only increase from here. We cannot stop them. With a heavy exhale, Emperor Jun released a sigh. He gazed into the depths of chaos, where a striking hue of purple shone brightly. It was indeed the domain of Zixiao Palace. The teachings of the sages should have taken precedence. Yet his mind had been preoccupied with the Luo book, leaving him disinterested in Zixiao Palace. After all, what if he left this entrance only to have Kunping and that monkey appear immediately afterward? The measuring scale of heaven and the Luo book. At that moment, 3 wisps of pure energy materialized, transforming into 3 figures before Emperor Jun and Tai. An elder, a middle-aged man, and a youth. As the 3 figures floated before them, an inexplicable pressure enveloped Emperor Jun and Tai. At that instant, the middle-aged man on the left turned to them, speaking with indifference. "Three-legged golden crow? What? Are you 2 brothers here to obstruct those seeking to hear the teachings?" The youth on the right responded with a clear laugh. "Are you here to block the way and rob us? What are the rules? How much is the toll?" Upon hearing this, Tai glanced at Emperor Jun, a look that left the latter speechless. "Why are you looking at me? Step aside, brother. You can't be serious about robbing these 3 esteemed beings, can you? Be careful, or even the Chaos Bell may not protect you." Emperor Jun had encountered these 3 venerable figures before. "My brother and I are simply waiting for others and have no intention of obstructing anyone." He bowed respectfully to the 3 and hurriedly pulled Tai aside. Though Emperor Jun often displayed arrogance and disdain in the presence of Tongyi and the Yaoqi, he dared not show a hint of anger towards these 3, for they were the 3 pure ones, the primordial essence of Pangu, born into the realm of the great Tao. Despite the myriad levels of immortality, in Emperor Jun's mind, there were but 3 realms. In the realm of the weak, akin to ants, among peers, comparable to myself, and in the presence of the formidable, akin to venerable seniors. One may strike with unyielding force against the ants, yet must approach the seniors with utmost reverence. Alas, within the 3 purities, the youth displayed a visage of regret. Soon after, the 3 transformed into ethereal vapors, vanishing from sight. "Brother, the sages expound on the way. Perhaps those who arrive first possess great opportunities. Should we not venture forth?" Upon witnessing the 3 purities retreat into the chaos, Tai hesitated momentarily before inquiring. "If your chaos clock were to go missing, would you think of the Zixiao Palace?" Di Jun took a deep breath, suppressing the urge to voice his frustrations. He was indeed aware of the great opportunities that lay ahead. Yet what of his Luo Shu? What of his measuring rod of heaven? Were they not equally vast opportunities? Let us wait a moment longer. The limit is indeed 9. Once the 7 have entered, should Kunchi still remain absent, we shall proceed. Di Jun contemplated before finally exhaling a sigh. Having spoken, he gestured for Tai to step aside, avoiding any further misunderstandings. As predicted, it was not long before several streaks of light rushed forth. Each figure emanated an aura that signified the pinnacle of existence across the heavens. They merely cast a glance towards Di Jun and Tai before continuing their swift descent into the chaos. Di Jun recognized these individuals. There was the Western World's Jane and Juani, Fushi and Nuwa from Mount Buzhou, as well as Xinyuanzi and Hongyun from Mount Wanshou. "Brother, that makes 9. We must enter," Tai urged, his impatience palpable. Hearing this, Di Jun could no longer remain still. He glanced towards the chaos, gritting his teeth as he declared, "Let us go." Just as they were about to plunge into the chaos, a sudden gust of wind arose from behind. A familiar aura surged forth. "Wait." Di Jun and Tai halted, their eyes turning crimson as they turned to face the source. Indeed, a well-known giant yellow clay bird soared towards them. Perched upon the bird was a figure, her enchanting gaze fixed upon them as she spoke. "Oh? Are you 2 little golden crows also headed to Zixiao Palace?" Chapter 23. The 3 purities arrive first. The 3,000 begin to speak again. "Hudu, how dare you show your face before us?" As the saying goes, enemies turn especially hostile upon encounter. Upon the appearance of Hutu, Tai's fury ignited, and he shouted in outrage. His entire being erupted in a blaze of golden flames, as if confronting a great adversary. "Oh, little golden crows, how delightful to see you. Are you also going to Zixiao Palace to listen to the teachings?" Hutu, however, did not exhibit hostility like the others. Instead, her expression was one of curiosity. "To Zixiao Palace for teachings?" Upon hearing this, both Di Jun and Tai were infuriated. "Hutu, did you orchestrate a scheme to lure Kunchi into the chaos?" "Where is Kunchi?" Tai demanded, his voice laced with desperation. Hutu shook her head slightly, her face adorned with confusion. "What scheme? Wasn't Kunping with you?" She was genuinely unaware of what had transpired. According to the plan, her mission was to obstruct Emperor Jun and his companions, allowing the Taoist of the primordial void to escape. When the Taoist communicated that there was no longer a need for her to intervene, her task was deemed complete. Thus, when faced with Tai's relentless inquiries, Hota found herself in a state of confusion. The reason Emperor Jun remained silent, allowing Tai to question Hotu, was that he had been observing her demeanor and actions from the sidelines. Seeing her seemingly oblivious expression, he could not help but feel a surge of irritation. Then why did you stop us from pursuing that red monkey? Unlike Tai's incessant chatter, Emperor Jun directly addressed the crux of the matter. Upon hearing this, Hota blinked her innocent eyes and replied, because I disapproved of how you were bullying a little girl. She spoke truthfully, unburdened by guilt. Initially, Hotu had sought out Yaoqi and Tongyi because she recognized Yaoqi and wished to request her assistance. Everything that followed was merely incidental. Upon hearing her words, both Emperor Jun and Tai felt a wave of despair wash over them. Hotu's obstruction had led to their loss of the celestial measuring ruler, while the whereabouts of Luoshu and Kuanpeng remained unknown. Yet, the reasoning behind her actions was so simplistic. However, looking at Hotu, radiating an aura of purity, and meeting her innocent gaze, both Emperor Jun and Tai found themselves momentarily stunned, with Tai's fiery demeanor dissipating in an instant. Brother, she seems to be speaking the truth. Tai leaned closer to Emperor Jun and whispered, it is said that Hotu is inherently kind-hearted and stands up for the oppressed. She has done so on numerous occasions. Taking a deep breath, Emperor Jun felt his thoughts swirling chaotically. Hotu's statements appeared sound, yet there was an underlying dissonance, compounded by their lack of evidence. What should they do? The most pressing matter at hand was to reach the Zixiao Palace, although 9 others had already entered the chaos. The disorder within the chaotic realm meant that being the first to enter did not guarantee arrival at the Zixiao Palace ahead of others. The 2 brothers, being the 3-legged golden crows adept at flight, might indeed have a chance to arrive before the first 9. Furthermore, could they even defeat her? Hotu's fighting style resembled that of a turtle. Where do you intend to go now? With this thought, Emperor Jun made an effort to compose himself. To the Zixiao Palace. The Tao ancestor achieved sanctification and imparted teachings to the masses. Have you not heard? Hotu pointed towards the glimmering purple light emanating from the depths of chaos. Elder brother, why don't we head to the Zixiao Palace first? Perhaps Kuan is merely lost in the chaos and has already seen the guiding light of the Zixiao Palace. Arriving there ahead of us, Tai looked at Emperor Jun, his gaze filled with inquiry. Emperor Jun recognized that his younger brother had completely relinquished any hostility towards Hotu, leaving him with a sense of helplessness. Upon a moment's contemplation, it appears that Tai's words hold a semblance of truth. In the realm of chaos, where order intertwines with disorder, anything is conceivable. Perhaps the Kuanpeng is merely adrift in the chaos. Now, with the resplendent violet light of the Zixiao Palace serving as a beacon, one shall no longer lose their way within this tumult. Yet, one might ponder, how many uncertainties can there truly be? Di Jun sighed inwardly. Very well, let us proceed. The pressing matter lies in the opportunities presented by the Zixiao Palace. With that, he did not cast another glance at Hotu, and the 2 transformed into radiant suns, vanishing into the chaos. It is indeed a blessing to possess a primordial spirit. Observing the retreating silhouettes of the 3 golden crows, Hotu murmured softly, her voice tinged with a hint of envy and confusion. Nevertheless, recalling that Tongyi had already facilitated her audience with the sage, she hesitated no longer, guiding her massive yellow clay bird into the chaos. However, once immersed in the tumult, her thoughts began to expand once more. How would these 2 brothers react upon discovering the identity of their comrade, Honyuan? The mere thought evoked a sense of pity. No, Hotu, you must not allow your compassion to overflow. At the Zixiao Palace's dojo, outside the Grand Hall, Yao Tai, who had been seated in meditation, abruptly rose. Her gaze fixed upon the chaos. She beheld 3 strands of pure energy approaching the Zixiao Palace at an extraordinary speed. Countless obstacles in the form of innate winds and fragmented space dissipated before these 3 strands. Witnessing this spectacle, Yao Tai's pupils constricted. In such a comparison, it was uncertain who truly posed a threat within the chaos. Hao Tian, cease your cultivation. Attendees are arriving. We must not lose our decorum or tarnish the master's reputation. Yao Tai seized a jade talisman to send a message to Hao Tian. At that moment, the 3 strands of pure energy had already suspended themselves outside the protective array of the Zixiao Palace, transforming into 3 figures. Taiqing, Shanqing, and Yuqing presented themselves to pay their respects to the Tao ancestor. Upon their emergence, the 3 pure ones bowed towards the Zixiao Palace. I have the honor of meeting the 3 esteemed friends, Yao Tai responded, bowing gracefully, and with a flick of her right hand, the protective array opened wide. Simultaneously, violet light extended from the plaza into the chaos, guiding the 3 pure ones to land upon the square. The 3 pure ones displayed no trace of hesitation, each offering a smile in return. We have the pleasure of meeting our esteemed friends. To speak candidly, based on their cultivation, Yao Tai had no right to be addressed as a peer. Yet, as she was the celestial child of the Tao ancestor, The circumstances were indeed different. As the saying goes, when one ascends, even their chickens and dogs soar alongside them. Not to mention, the Dao ancestor had attained sainthood. After exchanging a few courteous remarks, the youthful Tongtian Taoist curiously surveyed the Zixiao Palace. Leaning closer to Yao Tai, he inquired, "Fair maiden, when will the sage commence his teachings?" "Surely, my brothers and I have arrived first." Yao Tai scrutinized Tongtian, noting his striking features and upright posture, and chose not to dwell on his familiarity. If the little monkey were to transform, he would undoubtedly outshine you. After a moment of introspection, Yao Qi nodded slightly. The Dao ancestor had stated that the lecture would commence once 3,000 attendees had gathered. Although the three Taoist friends were the first to arrive, they could only bide their time for now. The three purities nodded in agreement. This time, they were the students, and they had no objections to the teacher's schedule. However, waiting for 3,000 people seemed excessively prolonged. Would these individuals not hasten their arrival? Chapter 24. Complete comprehension of the techniques. Divine eyes of Zixiao regarding the situation at the Zixiao Palace Square. Tong Yi, after communicating with Hutu and Yao Qi, no longer felt the need to intervene. At that moment, he returned to the sutra repository. The reason was simple. After engaging in extensive discussions with Hong Jun, he had obtained the answers he sought, specifically, the acknowledgement and stance of his master. Though unspoken, it was evident that Hong Jun recognized the uniqueness of his right fist and tacitly approved of his actions. Otherwise, he would not have remarked that the rare volumes in the sutra repository should not be damaged. Furthermore, the fact that the other party had even lent him the creation jade plate signified a clear, unvoiced recognition of his importance. Consequently, Tong Yi felt he could afford to relax a bit more. For instance, he contemplated a breakthrough. With the lecture at Zixiao Palace approaching and 3,000 listeners expected, it was somewhat unreasonable for him, as the sole disciple of a sage, to be inadequately prepared. At the very least, he needed to reach the golden immortal realm to align his lifespan with that of heaven and earth. Otherwise, once he entered Zixiao Palace, he would comprehend nothing, leaving him in an awkward silence. With this in mind, Tong Yi sat cross-legged, his right hand flipping over to reveal the Zixiao Heart Sutra bestowed upon him by Hong Jun. Without a moment's hesitation, he struck the purple light orb with a fist. Ding! Successfully shattered the Zixiao Heart Sutra. Ding! Received feedback, complete comprehension of the Zixiao Heart Sutra. As the notifications echoed in his mind, Tong Yi felt a surge of profound knowledge flooding his consciousness, an abundance of information regarding the complete content of the Zixiao Heart Sutra. The sheer volume of knowledge was overwhelming. Fortunately, Tong Yi had a foundational understanding from the introductory sutra, and his mind was significantly stronger than before. Soon, he withstood the impact of this vast influx of information. Previously ambiguous aspects of the heart method suddenly became clear, as if a door had been unlocked. Despite having attained the Xian immortal level, his techniques had only been rudimentary, limiting him to the true immortal stage at best. His Xian immortal status had been forcibly instilled by the system, rendering it insubstantial. Without the complete Heart Sutra, his cultivation had remained stagnant at the Xian immortal level, unable to progress. Now that he had acquired the full content of the Heart Sutra, the path ahead was clear. He could break through to the quasi-saint level, reaching the pinnacle of the primordial golden immortal realm, and unleash the full extent of his magical prowess. As he continued to swiftly grasp the heart method, he felt his understanding deepen. Tong Yi was completely immersed in the experience. Yet this encounter with the Zixiao Heart Sutra was markedly different from his initial one a millennium ago. This time, he did not trigger any spiritual phenomena, nor did he achieve a breakthrough in his cultivation. However, the aura he exuded became increasingly profound. Time slipped away like a fleeting shadow, and a century passed in the blink of an eye. Tong Yi opened his eyes and exhaled a heavy breath. This century had been well spent. He had comprehended all the essential meanings of the Zixiao Heart Sutra. It could be said that he was now acutely aware of how to navigate each step toward the pinnacle of quasi-sainthood, ensuring that he would encounter no bottlenecks along the way. It resembled the rebirth of an extraordinary figure from a previous life, embarking on the path of cultivation anew. At this moment, Tong Yi felt an extraordinary lightness. Having fully grasped the Zixiao Heart Sutra, he not only eliminated future obstacles, but also unlocked an ocular divine ability known as the Zixiao Divine Eye. Overwhelmed with emotion, he nearly shed tears. It had been a remarkable feat. This was the first time he had comprehended a divine ability without resorting to the shattering system. With a surge of playful curiosity, he wished to explore the power of this ocular ability. In the next instant, two beams of purple light erupted from his eyes, exuding an uncanny and majestic presence. His gaze pierced through the scripture pavilion, extending toward the plaza outside the main hall. Instantly, the scene of the plaza unfolded before his eyes. Only a handful of listeners, scarcely more than a dozen, had arrived. Naturally, Given that a lecture spanned 3,000 years, reaching the Zixiao Palace entailed traversing the 33 heavens and navigating through chaotic realms. Such a journey could not be swift. Not everyone possessed the seven-colored cloud skirt forged by Hong Jun. What intrigued Tong Yi was the arrival of the brothers Dijuan and Tai. Other powerful beings formed small clusters, standing in silence with closed eyes, clearly aware that they were in a saintly domain and refraining from any unruly behavior. In stark contrast, the two brothers, Dijuan and Tai, stared wide-eyed, their complex expressions directed toward the Yaoqi and Haoyan, filled with astonishment, curiosity, and profound confusion. Meanwhile, Yaoqi appeared oblivious to their presence, casting her gaze indifferently toward the chaos, seemingly lost in thought. This girl was clearly feeling apprehensive. After a brief glance at the plaza, Tong Yi averted his gaze, acutely aware of the impropriety of prying into others' affairs in the vast wilderness. It was akin to the troubles one might invite in a previous life by lingering too long on an unfamiliar face in the crowd. Once he withdrew his gaze, he subtly sensed the location of the spatial jade talisman related to Hutu. Realizing it was quite close, his eyes brightened, and he immediately transmitted a message to Yaoqi. Yaoqi, Hutu is about to arrive. Please escort her to meet Master, who has already consented to see her. I shall remain here to cultivate and will not be coming out. In the Zixiao Palace Plaza, Yaoqi felt the intensity of Dijuan and Tai's gazes upon her, making her feel quite uncomfortable, yet she continued to feign nonchalance. Suddenly, her eyes sparkled with realization. Regarding Tong Yi's cultivation, she was not taken aback. It stands to reason that the esteemed elder must have provided her with the essential scriptures of the core techniques. The diligent little monkey filled her with a sense of reassurance. Most importantly, with the arrival of Hutu, she no longer needed to remain in that place. Fear not, dear brother monkey. Concentrate on your training. I shall attend to Hutu, she communicated through her thoughts. Inwardly, she pondered how she had always referred to him as little monkey, and found it difficult to alter her address. The way she had always called him remained unchanged, while being addressed as brother by him left her feeling somewhat uneasy. Moreover, she acknowledged his efforts in facing those two golden crows. It must have been quite uncomfortable for him. Once this discourse concludes, I shall present you with a gift. Tong Yi's voice echoed in her ears. Upon hearing this, Yaoqi's previously aloof expression faltered, a smile involuntarily gracing her lips. Simultaneously, she felt a twinge of surprise. How did the little monkey know that Dijuan Tai had arrived? Even as a great Luo golden immortal, she had not sensed Tong Yi's divine awareness. Just as her thoughts flickered, a colossal yellow clay bird appeared outside the Zixiao Palace's arena, upon which stood a graceful figure. In an instant, it drew numerous gazes. Hutu, my dear friend, I trust you are well. Have you come to attend the discourse as well? Before Yaoqi could approach to greet her, an elated voice resonated from the square. An elderly man clad in red stepped forward, bowing to the newly arrived Hutu with a smile. Hong Yun, my friend, it is good to see you, Hutu replied, returning the gesture with a sincere and pure smile. Both shared a genuine kindness at heart, and each encounter fostered a sense of mutual understanding. However, aware that they were in a sacred venue, they refrained from further pleasantries. The giant bird dissipated into dust, and Hutu landed on the square, her beautiful eyes scanning the surroundings in search of Tong Yi. Unable to find her, Hutu felt a fleeting pang of disappointment and confusion. Sister Hutu, you have finally arrived. Your brother has made arrangements for you. Yaoqi's figure suddenly appeared before her. I am grateful, Fairy Yaoqi, Hutu replied with a nod and a smile. Given the crowd, they refrained from lengthy conversation. Come, let us go meet the esteemed elder, Yaoqi said, her demeanor bright as she took Hutu's hand, leading her toward the grand hall. Yet, this scene left many powerful beings present in a state of bewilderment. What did it mean? What brotherhood? What arrangements? What meeting the elder? They had arrived first, and were merely waiting patiently for the gathering to commence. Why was Hutu treated so exceptionally? It seemed she was being led directly inside, apparently to meet the sage. In that moment, many powerful beings exchanged glances, each reflecting the confusion in the other's eyes. Yet, none dared to inquire further. Even the Sanqing exchanged looks before averting their gazes, because they discerned a crucial point, the existence of the one whom Yaoqi referred to as senior brother. Although they were curious about the identity of this individual, having never heard of the Tao ancestor taking disciples, they dared not inquire further. However, there were those who could not contain themselves. It is unjust. Why can Hutu, who is slower than us, meet the sage? And Hutu, you deceived us. You and this girl are clearly in cahoots. Return our treasures. At that moment, Tai's figure flashed and intervened, positioning himself between Hutu and Yaoqi, his face aflame with anger as he demanded an explanation. This scene left all the mighty beings present utterly astonished. Chapter 25, Pinnacle of Golden Immortals. The transformation calamity clouds have finally arrived. as Tai obstructed Yaoqi and Hutu. His expression filled with indignation. The powerful entities in attendance were suddenly invigorated, widening their eyes as they gazed at Tai. They truly did not anticipate that this three-legged golden crow would possess such audacity to create a ruckus in the sage's domain and even block the sage's celestial attendant. However, their astonishment was swiftly overshadowed by curiosity. It seemed there was a spectacle to behold. What had they just heard? Hutu and the celestial attendant had conspired to deceive these two three-legged golden crows, and it involved treasures? In a swift motion, Hao Yan appeared before Tai the moment Yaoqi was obstructed. Despite his youthful appearance, Hao Yan's tone exuded authority as he confronted the furious Tai. First, Hutu is a distinguished guest of our senior brother. Second, our senior brother is the only direct disciple of the Lord. Third, this is the Zixiao Palace, where unruliness cannot be tolerated. Although uncertain of the events that had transpired, Hao Yan could only speculate that a causal relationship had emerged from the travels of his senior brother and Yaoqi through the primordial chaos. Nevertheless, he was resolute, as he declared. This was Zixiao Palace, and no one could act with impunity, let alone bully Yaoqi. Upon hearing Hao Yan's words, Tai was momentarily taken aback, as were all the mighty beings present. They had not expected that the sage had indeed taken disciples, and moreover, a direct disciple. In an instant, feelings of envy and jealousy surged among the powerful entities. They envied the senior brother that Hao Yan and Yaoqi spoke of. Why had they traveled great distances? It was to meet the sage, to listen to his teachings. If possible, they would have desired to be accepted as disciples themselves. Yet, they had not anticipated that someone would gain the sage's favor before them, and as a direct disciple, no less. What did this signify? The good news, the sage's path to sanctification had found an heir. The bad news, it was not them. In that moment, the entire square fell into a profound silence. Even Tai, confronted with Hao Yan's authoritative declarations, was momentarily speechless. The fervor within him momentarily faltered, and his consciousness sharpened. In that instant, Emperor Jun finally reacted from afar. Tai, cease your antics. This is not a place for such frivolity. With a flash, Emperor Jun hastily pulled Tai aside, who had been obstructing the path to the Yao Pool. Though he harbored resentment towards Hutu, upon recognizing the identity of the Yao Pool, Emperor Jun understood that reclaiming the celestial measuring ruler was an unattainable endeavor. Even if they were to become powerful enough to seek vengeance in the future, that was a matter for another time. Today, they must not act recklessly. Otherwise, not only would they fail to comprehend the teachings, but they would also incur the wrath of the sages, and the mighty beings of the heavens would regard them as foes. Brother, they clearly, silence. I have said enough. As Tai attempted to speak, Emperor Jun stepped forward and covered his mouth, his gaze fixed intently on Tai. The brothers exchanged glances. Emperor Jun subtly shook his head, his eyes brimming with an unyielding authority. Under the pressure of his brother's bloodline, Tai finally lowered his head, refraining from further protest. Gentlemen, this matter is a misunderstanding. I beg your forgiveness. Emperor Jun first inclined his head respectfully towards Hao Yan, the Yao Pool, and Hutu, his expression inscrutable. He then bowed to the other powerful beings present in the square, stating, My brother has acted rashly and has offended many. I ask for your understanding. Having said this, he led Tai back to a corner of the square. Let us go. The Yao Pool cast a satisfied glance at Hao Yan before proceeding with Hutu towards the Grand Hall. Thus, this minor farce drew to a close. However, within the hearts of many powerful beings lingered a shared bewilderment. Who exactly was this esteemed disciple of the sage? When the lecture commenced, would they have the opportunity to witness the answer? In the scripture vault, Tong Yi's violet glow in his eyes dissipated. When Tai had obstructed the Yao Pool, Tong Yi had already risen, preparing to head to the square. After all, the celestial measuring ruler had originally been his acquisition. He was not one to shy away from his responsibilities. Fortunately, Hao Yan had been the first to resolve the matter. Little Hao Yan is quite impressive. It seems I ought to prepare some gifts for him to strengthen his abilities. This lad is destined to be the future celestial emperor. As his senior, I must offer my support and ensure he does not become a puppet of Yuan Shi. After retracting his gaze, Tong Yi pondered inwardly. However, it was still early. The calamity of the witch and demon had yet to unfold, and the Fengshen calamity was still distant. He cast aside these distractions and addressed the system within his mind. System. Extract the pinnacle golden immortal cultivation obtained from the shattered Kunpeng. In the next moment, he sensed the light cluster representing the golden immortal pinnacle within the system space suddenly shatter, transforming into countless streams of light that surged into his sea of consciousness, instantaneously infusing his primordial spirit and body. Boom. Tong Yi trembled all over, his eyes widening in shock. He felt a searing pain radiate throughout his entire being in an instant. Every inch of his skin, every single cell screamed in excruciating pain. He understood that this was the side effect of the overwhelming magical power forcefully infused into him. Although the system would protect him from a fatal explosion of his body, the agonizing pain was inescapable. In this moment of desperation, Tong Yi had no alternative but to grit his teeth, close his eyes, and diligently circulate the Purple Sky Sutra. Before long, a phantom of the Purple Sky Palace materialized behind him, enveloping him in a swirling aura of violet light. As this ethereal glow surrounded him, he felt the intensity of the pain begin to diminish, allowing him to breathe a sigh of relief and immerse himself in his cultivation. Concurrently, the aura emanating from him surged explosively, with a peculiar sound resonating from his being. The pinnacle of his profound immortal barrier shattered instantaneously. Initial stage of the Golden Immortal, mid-stage of the Golden Immortal, late stage of the Golden Immortal, pinnacle of the Golden Immortal, boom. Unbeknownst to Tong Yi, at the precise moment he broke through to the Golden Immortal realm, an astonishing thunderclap erupted from the heavens. In an instant, a mass of pitch-black clouds materialized above the Purple Sky Palace. The clouds churned, converging in the blink of an eye, and unleashed serpentine arcs of electricity, brimming with an aura of catastrophic destruction. This scene startled everyone within the Purple Sky Palace. In the square, the once meditative mighty beings swiftly turned their gazes to the sky, shock evident on their faces. What was this? A tribulation? How could there be a tribulation in a sanctified realm? Was this the tribulation of a saint? No. It seemed to be a transformation tribulation. It was over. The entire Purple Sky Palace was shrouded in calamity clouds. Should we stay or flee? Flee. The heavenly law is above. I do not wish to face another lightning strike. Instantly, numerous mighty beings cried out in alarm, their expressions fraught with panic. Even the strongest among them, the three pure ones, were no exception. At their level of cultivation, who had not faced a tribulation? Who had not been struck by lightning? Certainly, each of them had endured it at least once, with many having faced it multiple times. It was precisely this experience that instilled in them a profound understanding of the terror of thunder tribulations, and they wished to avoid this unwarranted calamity. Moreover, who was unaware that within the area covered by the calamity clouds, the power of the tribulation would double with each additional person present. Thus, they were all alarmed, their figures flickering as they prepared to flee the Purple Sky Palace. The tribulation was imminent. With so many present, they would all face the same fate. Who among them wished to continue listening to the teachings? Retreat. At that very moment, a voice, resonant with the gravitas of antiquity, emanated from the main hall of the Purple Sky Palace. The next instant, an astonishing spectacle unfolded before the eyes of all the mighty beings. The calamity clouds began to contract, swiftly reducing to cover only a section of the sky behind the Purple Sky Palace. My disciple is undergoing tribulation. There is no need for alarm. Continue to wait. The voice resounded once more, echoing in the ears of every powerful being. We shall faithfully adhere to the sacred words. Numerous mighty beings, who were poised to take flight, bowed in reverence and, trembling with trepidation, returned to their original positions. In this moment, their outward calm belied the tumultuous waves surging within. The saint was indeed terrifying. The compressible calamity clouds. And what of the saint's disciple? What realm was he in? Why was he undergoing tribulation at this moment? Chapter 26. The Purple Calamity Thunder. The saint's disciple is terrifyingly powerful. The transformation tribulation of Little Monkey Brother has finally arrived. In the grand hall of the Purple Cloud Palace, Yao Qi, who had just brought Hutu inside, exclaimed in delight upon sensing the emergence of calamity clouds above the palace. It must be noted that when Tong Yi was merely a true immortal, the three of them had pondered over which realm he would transcend to achieve transformation. Or perhaps he would not require a transformation tribulation at all. To their astonishment, the tribulation had been delayed until this day. He had just broken through to the Golden Immortal stage, and it was indeed time for transformation. Hong Jun sat serenely upon the stone platform, remarking that despite swiftly compressing the range of the calamity clouds and assuring the many mighty beings that there was no cause for concern, he was internally filled with astonishment and helplessness, astonished that his disciple's cultivation speed was astonishingly rapid. How little time had passed since he emerged, and yet he had directly attained the Golden Immortal status. Helplessly, he felt that this disciple's speed of cultivation was so swift that even he, as a master, felt somewhat remiss in his duties. He had not yet had the opportunity to impart to Tong Yi the knowledge of transcending tribulations. This was information he had intended to share during his 3 teachings. And yet, this disciple had transcended the tribulation before his teachings even commenced. This left him feeling a hint of guilt, for transcending tribulations was no trivial matter. A moment's carelessness could lead to being struck down by the calamity thunder, resulting in death and annihilation. Ah well, should the situation become dire, I shall lend my assistance. Truly, I owe you that much. Hong Juan's gaze pierced through the hall, landing on Tong Yi within the scripture pavilion, as he mused to himself. Soon after, his heart stirred, and he collected the entire scripture pavilion. The thunder tribulation would obliterate all obstacles, and Hong Jun wished to spare the pavilion from such unwarranted disaster. In an instant, the empty space was left with only Tong Yi, sitting alone in meditation. Meanwhile, within the hall, upon hearing Hong Jun announce Tong Yi's breakthrough to Golden Immortal, Hutu and Yao Qi were taken aback. What? Hunyuan Daoist has only just become a Golden Immortal? What? The little monkey has attained Golden Immortal status? Their exclamations reverberated throughout the hall. At that moment, Hutu's exquisite visage was etched with astonishment. It must be understood that in her mind, she had always believed Tong Yi's cultivation was far from the mere surface of being a profound immortal. How else could he have shattered the innate grand formations with a single punch? How else could he have so effortlessly subdued the innate treasures? And yet, the reality was, he had truly only just broken through to Golden Immortal. How did he achieve such feats previously, with such a low level of cultivation? How could he be a direct disciple of the Tao ancestor? The more Hutu pondered this, the more perplexed she became. Her curiosity about this fellow Taoist of the primordial increasing. In stark contrast to Hutu's confusion and intrigue, Yao Qi was utterly astonished. Despite both cultivating the Zishao Heart Sutra, how could the other's progress be so terrifyingly swift? A typical cultivator would require thousands of yuan meetings to attain the Golden Immortal status. How long has this little monkey been in existence? Yao Qi's face was filled with disbelief. Yet, the ominous clouds of tribulation looming above the Zishao Palace spoke volumes. At that moment, her astonishment subsided, replaced by profound anxiety. Master, what grade and intensity is the tribulation my senior brother is about to face? Yao Qi asked, her heart racing as she turned to Hong Jun on the Dao platform. He knows nothing about the tribulation. What should be done now? Seeing Yao Qi so distressed, Hong Jun sighed inwardly. It had only been a short while, yet the little girl's thoughts were already consumed by her disciple. Do not be overly anxious. After casting a glance at Yao Qi, he turned to the still astonished Ho Tuesday speak. What do you wish to ask? Ho Tu, regaining her composure, hurriedly bowed to Hong Jun and began her inquiry. Meanwhile, beneath the foundation of the Sutra repository, as Tong Yi stabilized his cultivation at the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal realm, the ethereal image of the Zishao Palace behind him suddenly vanished. Has he reached the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal? Where is the Sutra repository? What is that above my head? Just as Tong Yi opened his eyes, still unacquainted with the powers of the Golden Immortal realm, he sensed a destructive aura hovering above him. He found himself inexplicably in an open space. Not only was the Sutra repository gone, but even the surrounding flora and trees had distanced themselves from him. The cushion beneath him had vanished. Startled, Tong Yi disregarded everything else and looked up. He saw a mass of dark clouds suspended overhead. Crackle, boom, the ominous clouds roiled, with countless arcs of electricity leaping and colliding within, emanating a sense of annihilation from deep within the storm. What the? I have to face a tribulation? The moment Tong Yi beheld the tribulation clouds, realization struck him. He was to undergo a tribulation. Hence, the Sutra repository must have been relocated by his master. Damn it. Previously, while still a true immortal, he had been curious about when he would transform or whether he would even face a tribulation at all. He had intended to inquire with Hong Jun upon his return, but amidst the ensuing chaos, he had completely forgotten about the transformation tribulation. To his surprise, upon breaking through to the Golden Immortal realm, he was finally confronting the transformation tribulation. What should he do now? In my past life, I lived honestly and had never been struck by lightning. I have no experience. Crash. Boom. Yet before he could contemplate further, a deafening clap of thunder suddenly erupted from above. As Tong Yi instinctively narrowed his eyes, the impending storm was palpable. Although the calamity had yet to strike, a bolt of purple lightning was already brewing ominously in the darkened sky. It surged forth like a colossal violet python, poised to leap down upon him at any moment. The eerie purple glow swiftly enveloped the world around him. What on earth is this purple lightning? Tong Yi was bewildered, utterly at a loss for what was unfolding. At that moment, he was not alone in his confusion. The numerous powerful beings gathered at the Zishao Palace were equally astonished. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. This was indeed purple lightning. Could it be the transformation calamity? Unthinkable. We, who embody the fortune of the Western realms, have only encountered azure calamities. Who could possibly be undergoing such a trial? Truly, as disciples of the saint, their extraordinary roots rivaled even the three pure ones. Gasps of astonishment echoed through the square as the mighty beings exchanged incredulous glances. Only the three pure ones displayed expressions of understanding. It is well known that the transformation calamity represents a trial imposed by the heavenly Tao. The greater the significance in the eyes of this celestial force, the more formidable the lightning. Among the hues, Purple possesses the most terrifying power. Among the assembled greats, only the three pure ones, who had emerged from the essence of Pangu, had ever faced purple calamities. Thus, the three brothers nodded in quiet acknowledgement, deeming it entirely reasonable. Although they had yet to meet Tong Yi, they surmised that if even the heavenly Tao did not recognize him, what right did he have to be a disciple of a saint? The only one present who truly understood Tong Yi was Hao Yin, who wore a face of admiration. He raised his head with pride, surveying the gathering of powerful beings. Over the years, he had grown numb to the wonders that Tong Yi had wrought. But now he relished the sight of others being astounded by his brother. This was a small solace for his repeatedly bruised spirit. The joys and sorrows of humanity should resonate with one another. Why should only I, Hao Yin, endure such blows? Today, you mighty beings shall share in my experience. Boom. Just as he contemplated this, the first bolt of purple lightning in the distant sky had fully gathered its might and struck down. Thunder rumbled ominously. In an instant, a terrifying aura of destruction surged forth, spreading throughout the entire Zixiao Palace. Hao Yin, upon hearing the sound, maintained his composure and stood even straighter. One hand grasped a whisk, while the other pointed defiantly at the descending calamity, his voice steady and indifferent. This mere lightning shall pose no threat to my brother. Witnessing this scene, the assembled greats could not help but be awed. A disciple of a saint, fearsome indeed, faced even the purple calamity with such nonchalance. Chapter 27. The great beings of the heavens in shock. The first bolt of calamity vanished in an instant. Boom. All eyes were fixed upon the first bolt of purple lightning as it descended like a giant serpent. It had only just arrived. The terrifying pressure caused the ground around Tong Yi to sink 100 fathoms. Come if you dare. Do you think I fear you? Tong Yi gazed at the descending thunder, his body trembling uncontrollably. Excitement and fear are indeed two sides of the same coin, yet in this moment, he could not distinguish which emotion prevailed. However, he understood that if he did not react soon, he would surely be struck down. 1,000 fathoms. 100 fathoms. 10 fathoms. The speed of the tribulation lightning was the most horrifying he had ever witnessed in his life. Even though he had activated the purple sky divine eye, which slowed the lightning's velocity to a crawl, he still found himself struggling to respond. Boom. In the next instant, the thunder struck the ground, blasting the already sunken earth into a gaping pit. The surroundings were charred black and ablaze. Meanwhile, Tong Yi was engulfed in a storm of purple lightning. Crack. Yet, within less than 3 breaths, the formless, destructive purple lightning shattered like ice, vanishing into the wind. The pit unveiled a figure with a raised right fist. Ding. Successfully shattered the purple tribulation. Ding. Gained insight into the principles of lightning. Oh, that hurts. Ignoring the notification echoing in his mind, Tong Yi grimaced in pain. His entire body charred and smoking, his once fiery red hair completely incinerated. He resembled a darkened Kunlun servant, with only his pair of violet eyes revealing his identity. Fortunately, it was within an acceptable range. As the scent of scorched flesh filled the air, Tong Yi began to circulate his inner energy. A purple light enveloped his body, and all his wounds rapidly scabbed over, healing in an instant. His somewhat late use of the system had indeed been a gamble, but a deliberate one. Firstly, he wished to gauge the potency of the purple tribulation. Secondly, he wanted to assess the resilience of his celestial body. After all, he was already aware that comprehending the laws of time was no simple feat. He could not rely solely on the system. True strength was paramount. Fortunately, this tribulation was not as terrifying as he had imagined. It could not instantly obliterate him. Given this, he would seize the opportunity to hone his skills. Previously, his cultivation had been insufficient to unleash many of his techniques. Now, at the pinnacle of the golden immortal stage, he could finally put them into practice. With this thought, he looked up at the horizon. He noticed that the second purple tribulation was already beginning to brew. Phew, thankfully, judging by the brewing speed, it would take at least 12 hours. Tong Yi let out a sigh of relief. Though he had decided to regard the tribulation as a means of tempering himself, the system would always remain his trump card. If the brewing speed of the tribulation outpaced the system's cooldown time, he would feel quite insecure. With this in mind, he sat cross-legged at the bottom of the abyss, indifferent to the scorched earth and dust surrounding him. With his eyes closed, he began to mentally tally his treasures, envisioning the spectacle at the plaza of the Purple Mist Palace. As he caught sight of the soaring purple light and the sudden dissipation of the destructive force from afar, the mighty beings of the heavens widened their eyes in astonishment. Hiss! The purple tribulation lightning. Had it truly passed so swiftly? Such terror. Indeed, as my friend Hao Yin had stated, the disciples of the sages possessed such formidable power. Alas, the sage's domain completely suppressed my abilities, preventing me from witnessing the grandeur of the sage's disciple overcoming the tribulation. The purple tribulation lightning flashed by in an instant. This is the demeanor of a master, a paragon for us all. Many powerful beings gasped in shock, their astonishment palpable. Even the usually composed three pure ones found it difficult to remain seated. Although Hao Yian had earlier extolled his senior brother, witnessing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. It must be understood that this was the purple lightning tribulation, the most fearsome of all tribulations in the primordial heavens, even though they were not undergoing the tribulation themselves. And despite the sage's methods compressing the lightning's coverage, when the purple tribulation lightning descended, they could hear the thunder and feel the aura of destruction, causing their very souls to tremble. It is safe to say that none present dared to be negligent in the slightest. Each one had to summon their treasures for protection, set up formations to counter the tribulation lightning, and prepare elixirs for recovery, among other precautions. Yet now what did they witness? The lightning struck, and in an instant, it vanished. They would rather believe that the sage's disciple, the one undergoing the tribulation, had been struck down, leading to the swift disappearance of the purple lightning. But now they observed the gathering of the second bolt of tribulation lightning, brewing ominously. The reality was evident. Hao Yian, my friend, what is the true form of your senior brother? What astonishing powers has he cultivated to be so formidable? At that moment, the young and talented Tongtian Daoist could no longer contain himself. He approached the Hao Yian immortal youth with a face full of admiration and inquired. Upon hearing this, Hao Yian awoke from his stupor. Indeed, even he had been left speechless by the earlier scene. He had thought himself numbed by Tong Yi's astonishment. Yet the image of the lightning tribulation being overcome in an instant had left him utterly dumbfounded, once again surpassing his threshold of shock. Ah, yes. Hao Yian quickly regained his composure, reminding himself that he must not panic. He was meant to astonish these so-called powerful beings of the heavens together. How could he be the first to be caught off guard? He steadied his mind, and though turmoil raged within, he maintained an outward appearance of calm. With a gentle wave of his whisk, he feigned an air of mystery and proclaimed, "All will be revealed once my senior brother completes his tribulation." The Tongtian Daoist nodded slightly, feeling that this was the demeanor a master should possess. He resolved to learn from it, for it would undoubtedly prove useful in the future. Whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, amidst the chaos, a sound pierced through the air. Observing the scene, Hao Yian seized the opportunity to distance himself from Tongtian. Was someone actually undergoing tribulation here? To his astonishment, he saw Donghua Daoist descending alongside Xihua Fairy onto the plaza. Every cultivator is acutely aware of the significance of the thunder tribulation. Upon their arrival, Donghua Daoist exclaimed in alarm. He nearly turned to flee with Xihua Fairy, but fortunately, Hao Yian intervened, explaining the circumstances and calming their fears. Thus, the plaza became increasingly crowded with individuals awaiting the teachings. Meanwhile, above Tong Yi's head, the second bolt of tribulation, lightning, gradually coalesced with the passage of time. Chapter 28. The seven bolts of thunder transforming into dragons. Mother, I have seen a dragon. Time in the primordial chaos is unmeasured. 300 years have slipped away in an instant. As more formidable beings gathered at the Zixiao Palace Plaza, Tong Yi, amidst a series of dangers narrowly avoided, successfully navigated through one purple thunder tribulation after another. An intriguing scene unfolded at the Zixiao Palace's sacred ground. Hundreds, thousands of mighty beings who had just barely traversed the chaos and landed on the plaza were initially struck with terror at the presence of the thunder tribulation, contemplating retreat. Yet, they were halted by Hao Yian, who reassured them with explanations. Eventually, they stood in silence, akin to their predecessors, gazing at the distant lightning strikes. The collective astonishment of these exalted beings left an indelible mark on their hearts, one that could never be forgotten. This day would later be inscribed in the annals of history, discussed with fervor by countless generations. The seventh bolt. Do you think it will conclude here? Not yet. There's more. 3 times 7 equals 21 bolts of lightning. How could there still be more? The tribulation has been dispatched in an instant. This is the fifth 7. 35 bolts of tribulation. In the past, my elder brother endured only 43 purple thunder tribulations. Is this disciple of the saint surpassing him? As exclamations echoed throughout the plaza, the number of tribulations Tong Yi overcame continued to grow. 300 years passed, and he had already traversed 42 purple thunder tribulations, astonishing many exalted beings. It is known that the rank of thunder tribulation corresponds to the cultivator's standing in the eyes of the heavenly Tao, while the quantity reflects the extent to which the heavenly Tao desires to obliterate the tribulator. At this moment, within the ranks of the 3 purities, Yuqing Yuanshi Daoist was filled with astonishment. His pride had always been high, believing himself superior among the myriad of celestial beings, second only to his elder brother, Laozi Daoist. Even Hongjun Daozu paled in comparison. In his view, Yuanshi believed that had the 3 brothers been born in an earlier era, their achievements would rival those of Hongjun Daozu. However, Upon entering the Zixiao Palace, Yuanshi encountered successive blows to his pride. At this juncture, his sense of defeat had reached its zenith. For the saintly disciple deep within the Zixiao Palace was not merely undergoing the same purple transformation tribulation as they were. Now, having gracefully traversed the formidable trials of 6, 7, and 42 thunder tribulations, the ominous clouds of calamity have yet to dissipate. What does this signify? It implies that, in the eyes of the heavenly Tao, the foundations and future achievements of the adversary surpass even the 3 pure ones. How could this be possible for this mothery? Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, a series of 7 thunderous roars erupted above the Zixiao Palace, resonating with relentless intensity. Many powerful beings, upon hearing this, gazed in disbelief. Indeed, in the next instant, they beheld in the distant horizon 7 purple tribulation thunders emerging simultaneously from the depths of the ominous clouds. Most importantly, this thunder tribulation was entirely unlike any that had come before. The 7 newly manifested tribulations merged together, taking on a corporeal form. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying figure emerged amidst the tempestuous clouds. It bore antlers like a deer, a humped head, rabbit-like eyes, a serpentine neck, a belly akin to a shun, scales of fish, claws of an eagle, paws of a tiger, and ears resembling those of an ox. The amalgamated purple tribulations loomed large, eclipsing the sky, a stark contrast to the first thunder. Merely suspended amidst the storm clouds, it radiated a chilling aura of destruction. Even the formidable beings gathered in the square felt their hearts race with trepidation. This, a dragon. The tribulation has transformed into a dragon. How could this be? Throughout history, such a phenomenon has never been heard of. 49 purple thunder tribulations, culminating in 7 that fused to assume the form of a dragon. How deeply does the heavenly Tao wish to thwart the success of the tribulation bearer? It is over. Such a terrifying thunder tribulation could hardly be surmounted, even by a Tao ancestor, right? Let us not forget, this is the holy ground of the sages, and they would surely not allow their sole disciple to perish. Nonsense. Can even the sages obstruct the thunder tribulation of the heavenly Tao? The moment the purple thunder dragon manifested within the ominous clouds, the previously silent square erupted into chaos. All the powerful beings gasped in astonishment, some even arguing about whether Tong Yi would succeed in his tribulation. In the grand hall of Zixiao Palace, what? Master, how could this be? How could a corporeal thunder tribulation appear? Unprecedented, never before heard of. Is the heavenly Tao playing tricks? At this moment, Yaoqi could no longer contain herself, her face a mask of panic as she turned to Hong Jun, having witnessed countless purple thunder tribulations strike Tong Yi over the centuries. Each time, her heart raced with fear. She dared not leave the hall, fearing she might rush to Tong Yi's aid during his tribulation. She could only pray fervently for his success. Fortunately, Tong Yi had managed to navigate the earlier purple tribulations unscathed. Yaoqi had initially thought that even if Tong Yi were to face 49 tribulations, it would be akin to before. Yet, she could never have anticipated that this time it would manifest in such a manner, with 7 tribulations merging to form a dragon. Who would dare believe it? Not just her. In the palace, the Earth Mother was equally astonished and incredulous. For centuries, she had resided within these walls, observing Tong Yi's tribulation while inquiring about the constraints of the Wu clan's bloodline from the Tao ancestor Hong Jun. Now, she had acquired many answers. Yet she never anticipated that Tong Yi would face such a thunderous tribulation. Upon introspection, she realized that even the 12 ancestor witches, whose physical forms were nearly sanctified, would not dare to claim they could withstand such a tempest. It was utterly bizarre. How could the heavenly Tao treat a friend of the primordial unity in such a manner? After all, it was merely an adorable little monkey. Contemplating this, the Earth Mother lifted her gaze towards the Taoist platform, eager to glean the truth from Hong Jun. Unbeknownst to her, at that moment, Hong Jun himself was equally bewildered upon witnessing the thunder tribulation transform into a dragon. He had just ventured into the ethereal realm to commune with the heavenly Tao and deduce the intricacies of the situation, yet he had received but a singular answer. The nascent will of the heavenly Tao informed him that everything was within the bounds of normalcy. Unusual phenomena must confront such tribulations. If one could endure, the heavenly Tao would disregard the existence of anomalies. If not, they would surely be obliterated. The heavenly Tao would not tolerate anomalies within the cosmos. Faced with this realization, Hong Jun felt a profound sense of helplessness. Although eons had passed since the inception of the world, and despite the occurrence of the cataclysm of beasts and the cataclysm of dragons, the will of the heavenly Tao remained inchoate and difficult to interpret. Nevertheless, Hong Jun had gleaned the answer he sought. It was merely the will of the heavenly Tao testing his disciple's mettle, assessing whether this exceptional student could endure the first dragon-shaped tribulation since the dawn of creation. Should he succeed, the heavenly Tao would refrain from further provocation of this anomaly. With a sigh, Hongjun addressed Yao Qi and the Earth Mother, saying, "Everything lies within the rules. However, no one has ever experienced such a tribulation since the world's creation, which does not imply that it does not exist. Let us remain calm. I have faith that your senior brother will prevail." Upon concluding his words, he ceased to elaborate further and turned his gaze towards the scene outside the palace, observing the figure beneath the violet thunder dragon. In comparison, the disparity in stature and presence between the two was as stark as that between clouds and mud. Could his disciple truly overcome this trial? If so, from this day forth, the heavens would be vast and the seas boundless for him. What in the world is this? A dragon? The legendary dragon? Mother, I have finally seen a dragon. At this moment, within the realm of tribulation, the heavens and earth were suffused with violet light. Tong Yi, seated in the celestial pit, stared in astonishment at the fearsome thunder dragon above him. Although he had never faced a thunder tribulation before, he understood. The thunderous dragon in the sky was far more terrifying than any tribulation he had previously endured. Roar! At this critical moment, the purple nine-clawed thunder dragon, born from 7 bolts of tribulation, suddenly unleashed a roar that resonated throughout the heavens and the earth. The sound waves sliced through space like a keen blade, sending ripples cascading outward. Following this, it surged forth with an unprecedented ferocity of destruction, akin to a runaway purple star streaking across the firmament, hurtling directly towards Tong Yi. Its momentum was so fierce that it seemed intent on utterly shattering the very fabric of the space Tong Yi inhabited, reducing all to nothingness. Chapter 29. Successful Tribulation. Transformative Nectar of Tribulation. The Thunder Dragon descended. The way of heaven is supreme. If it were me, I would surely be struck down. Need one even speculate? Who could possibly survive such a tribulation? I wager he will undoubtedly fail. Indeed, this is the first instance in the history of creation where a tribulation has transformed into a dragon. Should he succeed, I would eat excrement while standing on my head. Silence. Stop the noise. Do you wish to perish? Who is unaware of the low probability of success? But must you voice it? That is a disciple of a sage. In the square, as they witnessed the thunder dragon roaring down from the distance, lightning flooded the heavens. The array of powerful beings present widened their eyes and craned their necks, instinctively drawn closer. To them, such a tribulation seemed insurmountable. Their own calculations made it abundantly clear that they could not hope to endure it, and thus they harbored a desire to see no one succeed. Yet paradoxically, they deeply wished for Tong Yi to triumph over the tribulation, for it represented a test from the heavens against their audacious defiance. It loomed like an insurmountable chasm before all living beings. The mightier one was, the more they feared death, and the more they dreaded calamity. The powerful must endure 3 tribulations, while the mortal must face 5 calamities. In the face of tribulation, both mortals and the mighty are rendered equal. Should Tong Yi fail, it would not merely signify his own defeat, but would also symbolize the failure of every cultivator present. This would inevitably cast a pall over all gathered, invoking a shared sorrow akin to the death of a rabbit lamented by a fox. In summary, privately, they wished for Tong Yi to falter, yet publicly, they yearned for his success. At this moment, the hearts of many powerful beings were awash in contradiction. But isn't life itself inherently contradictory? Suddenly, at that instant, the resplendent purple light that had suffused the skies vanished. The colossal thunder dragon dissipated simultaneously. At this moment, all the powerful beings involuntarily blinked, their pupils constricting slightly. Mount Agape. 3 breaths. The entire square fell into a profound silence for 3 breaths. After 3 breaths, a tumult erupted, reverberating through the heavens. The thunder dragon has vanished? Has he succeeded? The way of heaven is supreme. It must be a success. Look, the tribulation clouds are beginning to change color. If the tribulation fails, the clouds of calamity disperse. Having successfully navigated the tribulation, the ominous clouds transformed into a resplendent golden hue, heralding the imminent descent of the transformative nectar. Indeed, the dark clouds have turned to gold, signifying triumph. Such a formidable thunderous tribulation has been surmounted. Disciple of the sage, a paragon for our kind. Yet, how dare you utter such words? Did you not just proclaim your success only to later indulge in excrement? Go ahead, partake in it. Fellow cultivators, do not be deceived by his words. He is not but a creature of dung beetle origin, reveling in rolling balls of filth. To him, consuming excrement is merely a mundane affair. In an instant, the entire square erupted into a cacophony of jubilance. Numerous powerful beings cheered, as if the achievement of this tribulation was their own. The reasoning behind such exuberance was simple. Tong Yi's successful tribulation instilled hope within them. After all, if even the 7 purple thunder tribulations could be traversed with ease, The intimidation of such trials has significantly diminished for immortals. When their turn comes to face tribulation, they will recall this moment, stabilizing their minds and casting aside their fears. In stark contrast to the square's revelry, the sight of the tribulation remained eerily silent. Only the charred, smoking pit and the clouds above, now tinged with gold, bore witness to the ferocious thunder that had recently ravaged the area. Notification. Successfully shattered the anomalous thunder tribulation. Notification. Achieved profound understanding of the laws of thunder. Notification. Acquired the root essence of the thunder-shrouded sacred body. Fortunately, these 7 thunder tribulations had fused together. Had they descended individually, the system would have only been able to shatter one, and that would have been the end for me. Listening to the notifications echo in his mind, Tong Yi withdrew his right hand, casting a wary glance at the heavens. In that perilous moment, he understood that he could not withstand the thunder dragon alone. Thus, in the final critical juncture, he resorted to the system. Thankfully, all had concluded. He did not dwell on the notifications, but instead gazed upward. What is happening? Why has it turned golden? Surely, there cannot be another tribulation? Tong Yi looked at the sky, shifting from black to gold, his expression one of caution. Yet, he was puzzled, for he did not sense the previous aura of annihilation emanating from the thunderclouds. Little monkey, splendid. You have successfully traversed the tribulation. This is the divine nectar that the heavenly way shall bestow upon you as a reward for your success. At that moment, a figure approached from afar, bouncing with joy, her face radiant with delight. Who else could it be but Yao Qi? Upon hearing her words, Tong Yi exhaled a deep breath, expelling the lingering black smoke. During this tribulation, he did not rely solely on the system with each thunder strike, but persistently experimented with various divine abilities to overcome the trials. For instance, he endured the thunder tribulation with his 9 heavens flame body, struck against it with his 9 heavens true fire, and deployed layers of spatial barriers above his head using the power of spatial laws. In summary, he employed every spell and law at his disposal, resorting to the system only when he could no longer withstand the onslaught. 41 times it was repeated. Indeed, the tribulation required time. Yet, he too needed time to heal his body using the Purple Sky Heart Sutra. At this moment, he was utterly exhausted, his body battered and bruised. Many parts charred to a crisp, hence the black smoke emanating from his mouth. Suddenly, at that very moment, the calamity clouds in the sky transformed into a brilliant golden hue. A torrential downpour of dazzling golden rain cascaded down. Tong Yi joyfully discovered that as the rain washed over him, all pain vanished, leaving him in a state of unparalleled comfort. Let this rain pour down, he exclaimed loudly, only to lose all his strength and collapse backwards, succumbing to unconsciousness. All the transformative dew fell into the pit, quickly engulfing him. Under the immersion of the transformative dew, his physical and spiritual injuries were healing at a visibly rapid pace. His aura began to slowly rise, and most importantly, his form began to shift towards a humanoid shape. However, Tong Yi was completely oblivious, lost in a realm of gentle tranquility. In the distance, the Jade Pool, witnessing this, dared not approach, merely standing at the pit's edge, stretching their necks to gaze. Hao Yin, the crowd is gathered. Let them enter, came a voice. At that moment, Hao Yin, hearing the sound, promptly bowed towards the Purple Sky Hall. As you wish. Observing this scene, the multitude of powerful beings who had been cheering fell silent, turning their gazes towards Hao Yin. Eager and restless, the square had long been filled with 3,000 individuals, yet all were focused on Tong Yi's tribulation. Thus none dared question why the proceedings had not commenced. After all, upon entering the Purple Sky Palace, Hao Yin had informed them that the one undergoing tribulation was a disciple of the sage. Now that the tribulation was over, it was naturally time for serious matters to unfold. Indeed, feeling countless eyes upon him, Hao Yin approached the shimmering gates of the hall, with one hand holding a whisk and the other gesturing towards the grand doors. He proclaimed, "Esteemed guests, the time has come. Please enter the hall to receive the teachings." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as his words fell, a cacophony of rushing sounds erupted. 3,000 streams of light surged towards the gates of the Purple Sky Hall. Among them, the 3 pure ones moved with unparalleled swiftness, instantaneously surpassing the other mighty beings, crossing the threshold and entering the hall's space. Upon entry, they beheld the empty Dao platform at the center of the hall. However, beneath the platform lay 6 cushions, radiating the essence of the Dao. This was an opportunity. In an instant, the 3 pure ones, in perfect synchrony, seated themselves without a word or hesitation, each brother claiming 1 cushion. Just then, the shimmering portal at the back also emitted the sound of rushing air, and 6 figures simultaneously entered the hall. Indeed, as Fushi, Niuhua, Hongyun, Zenyuanzi, Dijuan, and Tai entered the hall, they found not the sage they anticipated, but rather the serene presence of the three pure ones seated in meditation. Beside them lay three distinct meditation cushions, a sight that momentarily stunned the six. Without a trace of hesitation, they exchanged glances and surged toward the remaining cushions, fully aware that this was a remarkable opportunity that must be seized. In the grand hall of the Purple Cloud Palace, all six arrived at the cushions almost simultaneously, creating a curious situation where only 3 cushions were available for 6 individuals. What was to be done? Each recognized the immense fortune before them, understanding that acquiring it would render their visit worthwhile. However, deliberation was not an option, as formidable beings were already entering the hall, and time was of the essence. Thus, as they approached the cushions, 3 among them swiftly reacted, forsaking personal gain to assist their companions. "Sister, this cushion is not meant for me. Allow me to aid you," Fushi proclaimed, stepping forward to shield Nuwa and guiding her to the cushion beside Tongtian. "Old Hong, I am the progenitor of Earth Immortals. This opportunity is of little consequence to me," Xinyuanzi declared, relinquishing his claim as an ancient tome appeared in his hands, its cover inscribed with the words Earth Book. Upon its emergence, a golden-brown light enveloped Han Yun, guiding him to the second cushion. "Brother, I shall assist you." Tai spoke not a word further, summoning the Chaos Bell to hover above Dijuan, who, unperturbed, descended to the final cushion under its protective aura. Thus, the 6 were divided into 3 pairs, each making sacrifices for the sake of their companions. Establishing the arrangements of the cushions, the remaining 3 stowed their treasures and took seats at ordinary spots. In the blink of an eye, from their entry to the allocation of the cushions, the entire sequence transpired in but a breath. By this time, other powerful beings had already entered the hall, and the 6 cushions radiated an aura of profound significance. Indeed, a great fortune. Alas, I was a moment too late. My speed has proven to be my weakness, lamented one. Curse it. While others may be excused, the 3-legged golden crow occupies one, lamented another. Yet alas, this is the sacred ground of the sages. We cannot resort to violence. Enough of the clamor. Quickly claim your spots, urged the newly arrived powerful beings as they gathered around the 6 cushions positioned before the altar. Once again, an aura of greatness permeated the space, instantly revealing its extraordinary nature to anyone who entered. Regrettably, the cushions had already been claimed. This was a sacred ground for sages, where none dared to employ force to seize the cushions. Consequently, numerous eminent figures who arrived later could only sigh in resignation while hastily taking their seats. After all, although they could not occupy the 6 cushions, the other seats in the grand hall were arranged in order behind them. It was universally acknowledged that a seat in the front would surely be more advantageous than one in the back. In the blink of an eye, the hall was filled with 3,000 guests. Only 2 figures clad in tattered robes stood isolated, their attention fixed on the position of Emperor Jun. Indeed, while some feared the sacred grounds and refrained from acting with aggression, these 2 were exceptions. They were none other than the Western figures of Jane and Juanti. Though their cultivation surpassed that of Emperor Jun and Tai, they could not match the swiftness of Emperor Jun, whose essence was that of the Golden Crow. Thus, they arrived a moment too late. By the time they entered, the 6 cushions were fully occupied. Were they ordinary individuals? They would not dare to seize opportunities in such a public setting. Yet who were they? Jane and Juanti. From their emergence until now, they had traversed the barren Western realms, relying on their audacity, shamelessness, and forceful acquisition. "Junior brother, you should approach Jane and Juanti and whisper your guidance to them," said Lao Yuan. "How can you be so reckless? I do not wish for this position. This opportunity should rightfully be yours." At that moment, Han Yun, bewildered, realized that he had inexplicably taken a seat. He hastily rose and addressed Xinyuanzi, who sat behind him. In Hong Yun's view, he had come alongside Xinyuanzi to listen to the teachings, only for Xinyuanzi to bestow this opportunity upon him. He genuinely felt guilty about it. As he spoke, he attempted to stand up. Instantly, countless astonished and envious gazes turned toward him. Even Jane and Juanti, who were in deep discussion, momentarily paused, their eyes gleaming as they focused on the cushion beneath Han Yun. However, to their disappointment, before Han Yun could fully rise, he was forcefully pressed back down by Xinyuanzi, who sat behind him. "There is no need for further words between us. I have calculated, and my path does not lie on this cushion. Just sit still." Hearing Xinyuanzi's resolute words, Han Yun, with no other option, could only return to his seat, contemplating how he might adequately compensate Xinyuanzi after the teachings concluded. Perhaps a visit to the 9th heaven would be in order, as he had heard there was excellent soil there. He wondered if he could find some to enrich Xinyuanzi's ginseng fruit tree. This scene elicited sighs from many powerful beings who coveted the cushion beneath Han Yun. Yet one individual boldly traversed the numerous seats, approaching the rear of Emperor Junum. "Damn it, what are these 2 old fellows up to?" Di Jun felt a sudden surge of powerful energy behind him, causing a jolt of surprise within his heart. Although he and Tai Yi possessed impressive roots and were accompanied by treasures such as the river map and the Luo book upon their emergence, they regrettably came into existence later, and their cultivation still fell short of prominence. Should conflict arise, they would be invincible among their peers. Yet they were still outmatched when facing the likes of Jie Yin. Despite the indignation brewing within him, Di Jun turned to face Jie Yin, his anger restrained. Yet before he could articulate his thoughts, Jie Yin's coldly authoritative voice echoed in his mind. You have two choices. Relinquish your seat, or after the lecture concludes, I shall pay a visit to you and your brother on the Sunstar. Upon hearing these words, Di Jun's fury ignited. He had not anticipated Jie Yin's shamelessness to such an extent. Indeed, within this grand hall, Jie Yin refrained from taking action. But what would transpire once the lecture was over? He firmly believed that Jie Yin would follow through on his threat. Having already lost the Luo book and Kuanping, Di Jun's heart brimmed with sorrow and rage. Yet, he dared not voice his feelings further. Suppressing his anger as he swiftly rose and placed a calming hand on Tai Yi. Brother, our strength is insufficient to defend this seat. Even without Jie Yin and Zun Ti, others may be present. Transform your sorrow into motivation. Remain composed. Di Jun's efforts to steady the tempestuous Tai Yi through silent communication ultimately bore fruit, bringing calm to his brother. In the end, Di Jun, under the watchful eyes of the multitude, clenched his fists and took his place in the rear of the assembly. Ha! This seat is fated for me. Thank you, young friend Di Jun, for your generosity. In stark contrast to Di Jun's humiliation and indignation, Jie Yin laughed heartily as he settled onto the sixth seat. Meanwhile, the 3,000 Zishao guests, who had witnessed the entire exchange, harbored disdain in their hearts upon hearing Jie Yin's words. Those unafraid of Jie Yin and Zun Ti rolled their eyes in exasperation, their faces contorted with disgust. Fated to be with you? Are we blind? You forcefully seized it. You only dare to bully the weak. Why not try to take from Hong Yun instead? Buzz. At that moment, a ripple in space abruptly manifested upon the previously empty Dao platform. In the next instant, a figure clad in pristine white robes, strikingly handsome, stepped forth from the void. With an imposing presence and an aura that instilled awe among the 3,000 Zishao guests, it was as though they stood before the very embodiment of the Dao. Is this the Dao ancestor? Why does he appear so vastly different from my expectations? Wasn't the Dao ancestor traditionally depicted as an elderly figure? How can he be so youthful and so strikingly handsome? Even Tong Tian, who was notoriously self-absorbed and considered himself a paragon of beauty among the mighty, felt a twinge of inferiority in this moment. Thud, thud. As the crowd's curiosity grew, a figure has already knelt upon the ground, proclaiming aloud, I, the one who guides, pay homage to the saint. I, the one who grants, respectfully welcome the saint. Upon utterance of these words, the other disciples of the purple cloud no longer hesitated. If the guides themselves had bowed, any delay on their part would be tantamount to defying the saint. Even the three pure ones found themselves bereft of time for contemplation at that moment. In an instant, 3,000 disciples of the purple cloud rose in unison, clasping their hands in reverence toward the altar, exclaiming in chorus, I, the grand pure one, bow before the saint. Nuwa respectfully welcomes the saint. I, the junior from the underworld, pay homage to the Dao ancestor. Congratulations to the Dao ancestor on attaining sainthood. At this moment, the newly manifested Tong Yi, appearing upon the altar, was left in utter bewilderment. What is happening? Where is my master? After such a long struggle to take on this handsome human form, how is it that he is absent while these individuals are bowing to me? Chapter 31. Pretending to be the saint, the shameless guide and grantor Whoosh. Whoosh. Two young acolytes entered through the grand gates of the purple cloud, namely Yao Qi and Hao Yin. What on earth is transpiring? Isnt the master occupied with matters at the Taoist temple? Upon entering, they witnessed the scene unfolding in the main hall. Hao Yin stood in shock, utterly perplexed, and discreetly communicated with Yao Qi beside him. Clearly, they had mistaken Tong Yi for their master. Yao Qi, quick-witted, grasped the situation in an instant. However, she remained unconcerned and nudged Hao Yin with her elbow, saying, that is of little importance. Let it be. Just look at how handsome our senior brother has become in human form. She continued, it is somewhat vexing that his state of mind surpasses ours, emerging as a youth upon transformation. While her words expressed annoyance, the sparkle in Yao Qi's eyes as she gazed upon Tong Yi reflected admiration. Hao Yin's lips twitched at her words. Impersonating the master? Is that a trivial matter? Nevertheless, his attention was immediately captivated by the striking figure upon the altar, as he scrutinized Tong Yi's youthful and dashing appearance. Envy flickered in Hao Yin's eyes. Indeed, their senior brother was incomparable. Not only had he endured the terrifying tribulations of thunder, but he also emerged as such a handsome figure. Hao Yin gazed at the figure on the altar with sheer admiration. When Tong Yi first manifested, he had harbored some disdain and jealousy towards this little monkey. After all, why should Tong Yi receive the master's scrutiny upon his emergence? Yet, as events unfolded, spending a century comprehending the Purple Cloud Sutra to break through to true immortality, and another millennium without reliance on the sutra, yet achieving profound enlightenment, the series of remarkable occurrences had long engraved themselves upon Hao Yin's heart, diminishing his pride and leaving only admiration for Tong Yi. As the two celestial youths gazed starry-eyed at their senior brother's human form, Tong Yi on the Dao platform finally grasped the situation. What? Me? They mistake me for a sage? Who was the first to instigate this? Tong Yi cast his gaze downwards towards the ragged and emaciated figure of the Jain Taoist. It dawned on him that this fellow was the one who first proclaimed, "Salute the sage." Jain indeed? Very well, it shall be your burden to bear. As you wish, before my master appears, I shall assume the role of sage. No need for excessive ceremony. Tong Yi no longer stood, but instead seated himself directly upon the Dao platform, softly uttering these words. Upon hearing this, the 3,000 disciples of the Purple Cloud all wore solemn expressions. Most of them dared not lift their heads to gaze upon the platform, fearing that a mere glance might desecrate the sanctity of the sage. They dutifully settled down, their hearts aflame with excitement. Today, they finally beheld the sage. Upon returning, they would boast to their students and the children of their clans. Most importantly, after traveling such a long distance and waiting so long, they would finally hear the sage impart his teachings. In that instant, the great hall fell into a serene silence. Those powerful beings, once revered across the vastness of the primordial heavens, including the three purities, now sat obediently with ears perked, awaiting the sage on the platform to speak. Observing this, Tong Yi scratched his head in confusion. What was he supposed to do next? Was he truly expected to deliver a sermon? He felt utterly unqualified. Although he had recently absorbed the transformative nectar of the heavenly tribulation, propelling him 3 minor realms forward, from the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal stage to the latter stages of the Tai Golden Immortal, he knew that the scant knowledge he possessed would surely betray him if spoken aloud. As he pondered this, his gaze drifted towards the figures of Hao Yin and the Jade Pool standing at the entrance. To his surprise, in response to his imploring look, Hao Yin and the Jade Pool both nodded slightly, their faces reflecting encouragement and admiration. Tong Yi felt a sense of helplessness. What was this expression? "O sage, the younger generation suffers greatly. We bear countless grievances, and we implore your compassion." Just as Tong Yi contemplated employing a delaying tactic, a mournful wail abruptly shattered the solemn atmosphere, startling the 3,000 disciples of the Purple Cloud. They had been poised to attentively absorb the sage's words, only to be interrupted by this wretched outcry. Which heartless soul dares to howl like a banshee? In the next moment, they beheld a gaunt figure clad in tattered Taoist robes rushing to the base of the platform. The younger generation of Kunni hails from the west. Corrupted by the demonic sect, I have been born into a land of desolation. Now, I arrived too late, without even a place on the mat. My fate is woeful. I beseech the sage's mercy. Grant me a mat. The lamenting Taoist reached the foot of the platform and immediately prostrated himself, knocking his head upon the ground. Bloodied and battered, with tears and mucus mingling in a grotesque display, the scene was nothing short of heartbreaking. Witnessing such a spectacle left all present in the grand hall utterly astounded. The individual in question was none other than the Taoist of the preparatory teachings, who had arrived alongside the guide. His cultivation had already ascended to the great Luo level, placing him among the foremost of the 3,000 Purple Cloud's guests. Yet, at this moment, such a formidable figure was wholly disregarding his dignity, throwing a tantrum before the sage. This spectacle was indeed beyond comprehension, further deepening the astonishment of many great beings at the shamelessness of this Taoist. However, they soon grasped the reason behind his audacity. Every word he uttered was laden with meaning. Implicit in his remarks was the assertion that the desolation of the Western realms was a consequence of a demonic cult. But who was it that eradicated the demonic sect? Was it not the current Dao ancestor, the Honorable Hongjun? Furthermore, it was the fierce battle between the Dao ancestor and the demon ancestor that had ravaged the Western realms, shattering the spiritual veins and rendering the atmosphere devoid of vitality, which in turn led to the persistent scarcity of resources in the West. This indeed hinted at a causal relationship. As this realization dawned, the 3,000 mighty beings couldn't help but feel a tinge of curiosity. How would the Dao ancestor respond to this Western Taoist? Surely he would not genuinely extend an additional mat for him. If that were the case, I too could cast aside my shame and abandon all pretense. Meanwhile, on the Dao platform, Tong Yi gazed down at the still howling and wailing Taoist of the preparatory teachings, his brow furrowed. He recalled having witnessed this very scene in a previous life, where the guide and the preparatory teachings used this rationale to negotiate with Hongjun for karmic retribution. Left with no alternative, Hongjun had reluctantly accepted them as disciples. Yet, in the end, these two disciples betrayed the Tao during Hongjun's seclusion to achieve harmony, founding what became known as the Western religion and propagating Buddhist teachings under the guise of saving all sentient beings. In truth, their motives solely revolved around fulfilling the 48 grand vows they had established. Who amongst them was unaware of the fact that Buddhism originated from the Tao? Thus, to speak candidly, Tong Yi harbored a strong aversion towards the guide and the preparatory teachings, considering them exceedingly shameless and devoid of principles. Despite being mighty figures, they intentionally donned tattered robes adorned with patches. Who were they trying to repulse? Was it not a deliberate affront to Hongjun? While Tong Yi harbored such thoughts, a spark of realization ignited within him. Indeed, had the Tao ancestor been present, he would have acquiesced to the unreasonable demands of the preparatory teachings. However, since they perceived themselves as the Tao ancestor, then so be it. Whatever they desired, he would resolutely withhold. With this thought, Tong Yi no longer hesitated and called out to the still wailing Taoist below. Silence. The moment the words left his lips, the preparatory teachings jolted, immediately falling silent. Though tears and mucus continued to flow unabated. Everything is but a matter of causality. The number of meditation mats was 6, and thus, there was no place for you. This indicates a lack of affinity. With such a disconnect, why insist? It is better to withdraw. Tong Yi spoke with indifference, his clear voice resonating throughout the grand hall. He directly declined the request of Xuanti. Upon hearing these words, Xuanti was taken aback, while the hopeful Jie Yin, seated on the mat, was left in stunned silence. The numerous powerful figures within the hall also paused in astonishment. Chapter 32, The Red Cloud offers the mat. The true sage has arrived in the next moment. Peculiar sounds echoed from various corners of the hall, as the 3,000 listeners reacted, unable to contain their laughter, yet quickly stifling it. Beneath the Tao platform, Xuanti, whose forehead was bloodied and exaggeratedly injured, was rendered speechless by Tong Yi's words. Wasn't this narrative supposed to unfold differently? Logically, in front of such a multitude, when one seeks causality, a sage should at least provide a mat. Yet here he was, outright declaring a lack of connection. In light of this, Xuanti inhaled sharply, casting a pleading glance towards Jie Yin. The bloody Jie Yin was also bewildered. He raised his hand to shield himself from the splattered blood, while his mind raced with thoughts. It must be noted that when the Tao ancestor attained sagehood and announced his intent to teach, both Jie Yin and Xuanti had invested considerable effort in calculating their fortunes. The outcome indicated that by presenting a tragic narrative, they could secure great opportunities. Yet, what was happening now? Xuanti was in such a dire state, bleeding profusely, and yet Hongjun had declared that they were without affinity? Realizing this, Jie Yin grew anxious. He had no idea how it felt to sit upon this mat until he did. As soon as he perched himself, he felt a profound essence of the Tao surge through him, rushing towards his crown. This mat must be fought for on behalf of Xuanti. Suddenly, amidst the laughter that had nearly caused them internal injuries, the 3,000 Zishao guests heard a muffled thud. They turned towards the sound, only to witness Jie Yin, seated upon one of the 6 mats, drop to his knees. He then proceeded to bow fervently, echoing Xuanti's actions, exclaiming in despair, "O sage, in your compassion, please show mercy upon my brother. We were born amidst turmoil, our kin perished in the chaos. It is solely through the support of the beings of the West that we have achieved our present status. Today, we have come to hear your teachings, hoping to gather more opportunities to benefit the sentient beings of the West. For the sake of the countless souls in the West, I beseech you to grant Xuanti a chance." Jie Yin's desperate cries reverberated throughout the grand hall, lingering in the air. This scene left all the powerful figures present utterly astonished. They could hardly fathom that anyone could be so shameless as to invoke the plight of the beings of the West the moment the sage declared a lack of affinity with Xuanti. The underlying message suggests that the entire Western realm has been imperiled by Hongjun Daozu. How audacious! Is it not disingenuous to use the plight of the entire Western beings as an excuse for their personal grievances? They claim that their current level of cultivation is a result of the assistance from countless beings in the West. Assistance indeed. How could they have the gall to assert such a thing? Is the reality truly as they portray it? Those present, powerful beings, are well aware that these two brothers have ascended to their current stature solely through plunder and violence. They initially ravaged the entire Western world, seizing all resources for themselves. Even the remnants of ancient demonic sects and the sacred Mount Shumi have fallen under their dominion. With 3,000 witnesses present, and only these two hailing from the West, it is evident how ruthless their methods are. After devastating the Western world and enhancing their powers, they then turned their destructive tendencies toward the 4 corners of the East. South, North, and Central lands. They would seize what they could conquer, steal what they could not, and resort to begging when all else failed. Their reputation is atrocious. Yet now, they present themselves as noble and selfless. Even a powerful being transformed from a celestial canine shook his head in disbelief upon hearing this. Shameless. Utterly shameless. The onlookers felt compelled to expose the true nature of these despicable characters, but they restrained themselves. Ultimately, the audacity of Jane and Junyi stems from their reliance on being Western beings, bolstered by the karmic ties owed to them by Hongjun Daozu. This is the truth. Should they voice their dissent, they risked depriving Jane and Junyi of this opportunity, resulting in significant repercussions. Therefore, the assembly could only express their disdain through subtle gestures, hoping that the Daozu would not be swayed by the empty rhetoric of these two. If, indeed, they were genuinely concerned for the Western beings, granting Jane and Junyi two significant opportunities would render them far worse off than death itself. Unbeknownst to them, the figure on the dais is no saint. At this moment, Tong Yi observed yet another sobbing individual in the crowd and, with a hint of irritation, called out, "You too, go sit in the back." As Tong Yi's straightforward and slightly impatient words echoed through the hall, the 3,000 powerful beings were momentarily taken aback, followed by a ripple of suppressed laughter throughout the assembly. The crowd found amusement in the unexpected demeanor of the so-called saint. Meanwhile, Jane, who had been wailing, was suddenly struck dumb. He stared wide-eyed, incredulous at the Daozu on the dais, internally exclaiming, "What a heartless saint! I have performed so pathetically, even invoking the Western beings. And yet he remains so unyielding, insisting I vacate my seat." Alas, it was a miscalculation. No, he thought, I wanted to sit at the forefront. At that moment, an unforeseen spectacle unfolded, one that astonished everyone present, including Tong Yi. The saint stood above. The junior could no longer bear to witness the pitiable state of the two Western friends. Upon hearing of their plight, he was utterly heartbroken. Thus, he resolved to offer his mat to the esteemed friend of the Western realm, as a means to beseech a glimmer of opportunity for the beings of the West. Observing this, the venerable Red Cloud rose gracefully and approached the prostrated friend, assisting him to his feet while gesturing towards the mat. This scene left all present in a state of astonishment. The 3,000 guests of the Purple Clouds regarded Red Cloud with incredulous expressions, unable to fathom how such a fool could exist within the vast cosmos. These shameless individuals from the West were clearly performing a charade, feigning misery. Yet, even the sages were unconvinced. Red Cloud stood alone in his belief. In that instant, some grew anxious, for they understood that Red Cloud's compassion was genuine. His innate goodness prevented him from witnessing the suffering of others. His character merited the fortune of the mat, and the powerful beings present were convinced of his morality. However, should this mat be bestowed upon the shameless one, it would truly pain all in attendance. Yet, at that moment, none could match the swiftness of the friend from the West. "Thank you, my friend. I am honored to fulfill this duty. I express my gratitude on behalf of the beings of the West," he exclaimed. As soon as Red Cloud's words fell, the friend from the West had already settled upon the mat, his voice following suit. Red Cloud was momentarily taken aback, astonished by the speed of his actions. Nevertheless, his genuine disposition led him to disregard such trivialities, and he turned to walk towards the empty space at the back. Wait. At that moment, the witness on the platform, Tong Yi, was filled with indignation. He had always despised moral coercion and false piety. While Red Cloud's kindness was sincere, it was foolish. His aversion to foolishness struck him at that instant. "Did I consent to allow you to sit here?" Tong Yi directed his gaze towards the now jubilant friend on the mat, his tone chillingly indifferent. The friend, nearly in tears upon the mat, felt targeted by the sage's words. Red Cloud has already agreed. Why do you concern yourself with so much? Red Cloud, I offer you one more opportunity. Will you allow this seat? Tong Yi implored Red Cloud, his heart wavering. This mat represents karma. Should you relinquish it, you may face tribulations in the future, ultimately leading to your demise. This world lacks malevolence, yet virtuous souls are few and far between. Tong Yi's intention was merely to lend a final measure of support to this good individual. Ultimately, however, the decision rested solely with Red Cloud. Upon hearing Tong Yi's words, Red Cloud paused, his expression clouded with hesitation. He was not suddenly inclined to retract his offer. However, at this moment, Jin Yuanzi, realizing the gravity of the situation, was fervently sending him messages, chastising him for his foolishness and urging him not to forsake this opportunity. He could sense that within the grand hall, powerful beings who were on friendly terms with him were also silently persuading him with their gazes. This caused Red Cloud to feel a twinge of hesitation. Ultimately, he gently closed his eyes, bowed towards the Dao platform, and spoke. "The beings of the West are in greater need of this opportunity than I. I believe that Daoist Junyi will honor his word." With that, Red Cloud's figure flickered, and without a hint of hesitation, he settled into the vacant seat at the back, coincidentally next to Emperor June. However, upon seeing Red Cloud, Emperor June displayed no sign of friendliness. Instead, he turned away, not sparing him a glance. In an instant, the hall was filled with various sighs. What a fool. Tong Yi chuckled in exasperation at the other's obstinacy. Good words are wasted on the damned. With that, he felt no inclination to say more. Just then, a familiar yet indifferent voice echoed from behind Tong Yi. He shivered. He had overstepped his bounds. His master had arrived. Chapter 33. The Celestial Being Stalled. What is truly real? Within the Purple Cloud Hall, the small farce instigated by Red Cloud finally came to an end. The 3,000 guests of the Purple Clouds, amidst their sighs, regained their composure. Regarding Red Cloud's actions, they could only express their respect for another's fate. This commotion had somewhat diminished their initial excitement about meeting the sage. Now, their minds were devoid of other thoughts, solely anticipating the sage's teachings. Even Junti, who was below the Dao platform, shared the same sentiment. Hastily cleaning the bloody ground and their garments, they then tidied their appearance and sat obediently on their cushions, eagerly awaiting the sage to commence his discourse. However, at that moment, an invisible pressure suddenly descended. In the next instant, myriad strands of purple auspicious energy cascaded from the heavens. A mysterious figure, shrouded in profoundness, appeared on the Dao platform, silently manifesting behind the youthful sage. This figure was enveloped in a hazy holy light, rendering their features indistinguishable. Yet, merely gazing upon them instilled a profound sense of insignificance within those present. In an instant, the 3,000 powerful beings in the hall were rendered speechless. They frequently turned their heads to regard the ethereal figure, then back to the youth with whom they had been bantering for some time. At this moment, the 3,000 beings felt their minds descend into chaos, completely stalling. What has occurred? Where am I? Who am I? Is that youth the sage? But who is this figure radiating terrifying holy might? Suddenly stepping forward from the grand entrance, Hao Qian and Yao Qi bowed deeply to Dao Tai, proclaiming, "We humbly welcome you, esteemed master." Upon hearing that familiar voice behind him, Tong Yi felt a shiver run down his spine, akin to the sensation of being caught by his parents while sneaking a glance at the television in his youth. Momentarily flustered, he quickly regained his composure upon hearing the voices of Hao Qian and Yao Qi. "Disciple pays homage to the revered master," Tong Yi exclaimed, springing to his feet from the Dao Tai, bending his body in a graceful bow towards the newcomers. The fluidity of his movements was as though he had practiced this countless times before. This scene left the myriad powerful beings below the Dao Tai utterly astonished, each one frozen in their seats, gazing blankly at the youth who had just bowed. Even those seated on the futon, such as the three pure ones and Nuwa, were rendered speechless, their faces etched with confusion as they looked at Tong Yi. What had they just heard? "We humbly welcome you, esteemed master." Disciple pays homage to the revered master? Could it be that this youth was a disciple of a sage? The figure that had just materialized was indeed the sage. What then were their previous bows and dialogues worth? What was the truth? In an instant, the grand hall was enveloped in a profound silence. Meanwhile, atop the Dao Tai, after bowing, Tong Yi awaited a gentle response from Hong Jun, but instead, he was met with the cold indifference of Hong Jun's voice echoing in his mind. "What were you just doing?" Taken aback, Tong Yi lifted his gaze to meet Hong Jun's tranquil countenance, which revealed no trace of emotion. Yet, the depth of his ancient eyes mirrored a vast, chaotic expanse. In that single gaze, Tong Yi felt as though his very soul was laid bare. It dawned upon him that Hong Jun was questioning his actions, or perhaps reproaching him for something. The entirety of the primordial realm adhered to the intricate web of destiny. Every event, such as the sermon today or the placement upon the futon, was predestined from the very beginning. However, he had nearly altered the course of fate. The fate of Hong Yun was inconsequential, yet the potential downfall of the future Western sages, Jane and Zuni, due to his actions would have profound ramifications. This was why Hong Jun's attitude towards him had shifted so dramatically. Disguising oneself as a sage was a trivial matter. Tampering with destiny was of far greater significance. Disciple merely found the actions of these two shameless individuals intolerable. "I beseech you, revered master, to forgive my transgression." With clarity washing over him, Tong Yi felt a sense of liberation. He realized that there was no longer a need to conceal his intentions. He simply could not abide the presence of Jane and Zuni. Upon hearing his response, Hong Jun remained silent, his gaze fixed upon him. At that moment, Hong Jun was filled with a sense of helplessness. About to deliver a sermon, he could not afford any interruptions. Thus, fearing that the seal deep within the forbidden grounds of the Purple Cloud Palace might weaken, he took measures to reinforce it. Little did he expect that in such a brief moment, his mischievous disciple, having just achieved transformation, would once again stir up trouble. Just as Tong Yi had surmised, His initial intention to take this troublesome disciple under his wing stemmed from recognizing Tong Yi as an anomaly. He wished to keep a close watch on him to prevent any disturbances, lest the will of heaven come knocking, leaving him, the master, to deal with the aftermath. Fortunately, his timely arrival averted any calamity. Moreover, the reason this monkey sought to alter fate was not born of malevolence, but rather the innocent influence of a pure heart. Henceforth, he would need to keep a vigilant eye on this monkey. Hongjun pondered, choosing to say no more. He gestured toward a corner of the platform, indicating, "Find yourself a place to sit." Upon hearing this, Tong Yi's handsome visage broke into a slight smile. Indeed, his master still cherished him. He did not feign modesty, but rather, joyfully settled himself in a chilly corner of the platform. Clearing his throat, Tong Yi, seated cross-legged, addressed the assembly of 3,000 mighty beings below. The Holy One's direct disciple, the mischievous monkey Taoist, greets you, fellow Taoists. Should you not hasten to pay your respects to the Holy One? At this proclamation, the Grand Hall erupted in a chorus of astonishment. The 3,000 mighty beings finally grasped the situation, their eyes wide with disbelief, yearning to curse aloud. Holy One's disciple? Pay respects to the Holy One? Did we not just do so? And to you, no less. How dare you? In that moment, gazing at Tong Yi, who displayed not an ounce of remorse upon his countenance, the hearts of the 3,000 mighty beings surged with a torrent of indignation. If looks could kill, Tong Yi would have perished countless times over. What was most infuriating was the evident favoritism the Holy One bestowed upon this disciple. Such a serious act of impersonation warranted at least a reprimand, yet it seemed even that was too much to ask. Consequently, the 3,000 mighty beings refrained from venting their frustrations on Tong Yi, instead casting venomous glares at Jane and Junti. They could vividly recall that when Tong Yi first appeared, they had yet to comprehend the situation. These two shameless individuals had been the first to kneel in reverence. The true instigators. Meanwhile, Jane and Junti, acutely aware of the piercing gazes directed their way, felt an overwhelming fury. They exchanged glances, nearly spitting blood in exasperation. What a grave injustice. They finally understood why things that had been meticulously calculated faltered in the presence of the Holy One, because the one just now was a mere impersonator. They gazed at Tong Yi on the platform, their faces etched with sorrow and indignation, mentally lamenting, "So, you are the greatest performer of them all. This entire hall is but your stage." However, they dared not act upon it. The reasons were apparent. Anyone with discernment could see the profound affection that Hongjun had for this disciple. Furthermore, could they truly express their anger? This predicament was solely their own making. In retrospect, it became clear why this young man emanated the aura of the heavenly Tao. He had just completed his tribulation. Contemplating this, both Jane and Junti felt a surge of frustration and berated the other mighty beings for their incompetence. Among the 3,000 celestial beings, not a single one could discern the truth. On the Tao platform, Tong Yi faced the gazes directed at him from below with indifference. Rather, he turned to report, "Master, they are exceedingly disrespectful, failing to pay their respects to you." Instantly, the 3,000 mighty beings, who had been suppressing their anger, rose in unison, their eyes blazing with fury at Tong Yi. How could such an audacious individual exist in this world? Enough. There is no need for excessive formalities. The number is complete. We shall commence the transmission of the Tao. The voice of Hongjun reverberated throughout the Grand Hall. As his words resonated, a wave of comfort washed over everyone, cleansing them of all negative emotions. We humbly welcome the sage to impart the Tao. The multitude of mighty beings expressed their reverence, bowing and taking their seats, no longer causing a disturbance. Hongjun nodded and began his discourse. Chapter 34. The Five Energies Converging, Late Stage of the Tai Golden Immortal. There are three transmissions of the Tao. The first is from mortal spirits to true immortals. What is an immortal? What is the Tao? Above lies the yellow court. Below the gate of origin, behind is the dark abyss, before the life gate. Breathe within the abode and enter the Dantian. Pure water from the jade pool nourishes the spiritual roots. The sage spoke without a hint of hesitation. The voice of the heavenly Tao flowed from Hongjun's lips, transforming into tangible forms, resembling golden tadpoles, swimming throughout the Grand Hall. In an instant, extraordinary phenomena erupted. The entire purple cloud palace radiated with dazzling purple light. Auspicious energy descended from the heavens, encircling the heads of the 3,000 mighty beings. The sound of the Tao manifested as lotuses rising from the ground, swaying around the mighty beings. Together with the golden tadpole symbols, they created a wondrous tableau of the sage imparting the Tao. Is this what it means to have the sage impart the Tao? Witnessing this scene, all the mighty beings were struck with awe and promptly closed their eyes. Although the sage declared that this session would cover only from mortal spirits to true immortals, they felt no regret, but rather immense excitement. This stage marked the beginning for all immortals, the foundation of their existence. Previously, they had no guidance, and all present had relied solely on their own explorations and gradual cultivation. Now, with the sage imparting the Tao at this stage, it was akin to refining their foundations. Naturally, they were filled with exhilaration and began to immerse themselves in the profound essence of the teachings. Soon, a remarkable spectacle unfolded. As the multitude of mighty beings began to absorb the teachings, the Tao sound symbols, resembling golden tadpoles, began to descend towards their foreheads. Whenever the Tao sounds were absorbed, a look of sudden enlightenment began to emerge on the faces of the numerous powerful figures. At this moment, the disparity in comprehension became evident. The stronger the understanding, the more Tao sound runes were absorbed, and the more profound the look of realization on their faces. The auspicious aura surrounding them, and the Tao sound golden lotuses also multiplied. Simultaneously, the function of the 6 meditation cushions was immediately manifested. The 6 cushions radiated different glows, which transformed above the heads of the 3 pure ones, Niwa, and the 2 guiding figures into small whirlpools, aiding them in absorbing the Tao sound runes. Meanwhile, on the Tao platform, upon witnessing this scene, Tong Yi hastily closed his eyes. To his surprise, as he operated the Zixiao Heart Sutra, the Tao platform began to radiate light. This brilliance coalesced into a gigantic hand that continuously grasped the Tao sound runes suspended in midair, subsequently pressing them into Tong Yi's brow. What an astonishing turn of events! Tong Yi felt a surge of joy, finally understanding why Hong Jun had instructed him to sit there without providing a cushion. It turned out that this Tao platform was far more formidable than any cushion. However, it was also true that his level of comprehension could not possibly compare to that of the powerful beings present. Although his insights prior to becoming a true immortal were entirely instilled by the system, rendering them flawless, upon absorbing these Tao sound runes, he discovered that his primordial spirit within the Dantian had significantly strengthened. His cultivation level began to rise slowly as well. With this thought, Tong Yi focused on dual tasks, allowing his primordial spirit to concentrate on absorbing the Tao sound runes while his consciousness delved into the system. After successfully transcending the tribulation, he had been eager to return to the Grand Hall to share the joyous news, forgetting to assess his own gains. System, open the attribute panel. Host, Tong Yi. Cultivation, late stage Tai Golden Immortal. Technique, Zixiao Heart Sutra, perfected. Bloodline, arm-length monkey, root bone. 9 heavens thunder flame sacred body. Law, beginner in space law. Minor accomplishment in formation law, major accomplishment in thunder law. Divine abilities, 9 heavens true fire, space jump. 9 palace deduction technique. Treasures, fragment of the creation jade plate. Formation visualization diagram, unknown space transmission stone. Unextracted, Kuanpung bloodline, minor accomplishment in formation law comprehension. Gazing at the pristine attribute panel, Tong Yi felt a sense of satisfaction. This recent tribulation, while fraught with tension, ultimately bore fruitful results. The most substantial gain was undoubtedly his advancement to the late stage of the Tai Golden Immortal. As previously mentioned, the essence of the Tai Golden Immortal primarily revolves around the process of the 5 Qi returning to origin. This process is complex, yet fundamentally involves aligning the 5 internal organs with the 5 elements and the 5 directions. The internal organs integrate with the spirit and essence, refining the 5 elemental energies and condensing them in the central dantian, situated between the breasts. This encapsulates the process of the 5 Qi returning to origin. A deeper contemplation reveals that prior to becoming a golden immortal, one is essentially laying the groundwork and stabilizing the dantian. The Tai Golden Immortal is responsible for consolidating the primordial essence and stabilizing the central dantian. While the 3 flowers gathering at the crown of the great Luo Golden Immortal naturally pertains to the stabilization of the upper dantian. At this juncture, Tong Yi's cultivation has reached the late stage of Tai Golden Immortal. His 5 internal organs have already refined 2 types of vital energies. The kidneys have merged with essence to produce water energy, and the liver has fused with the soul to generate wood energy. It is evident that 2 distinct orbs of luminous gas swirl within his heart, and with each cycle of his cultivation technique, these 2 orbs rotate, refining the inhaled spiritual energy to assist in his practice. Moreover, this tribulation has yielded 2 additional gains. The first is his root bone, which, after shattering the thunder tribulation, granted him the thunder-obscured sacred body. Upon absorption, it fused with his original 9 heavens flame body, transforming into the current 9 heavens thunder flame sacred body. As for its effects, Tong Yi has yet to discern them, but has a faint sense that this sacred body may be more closely related to physical cultivation rather than the cultivation of the primordial spirit. The second gain is the mastery of the thunder law. As previously mentioned, a minor accomplishment in the laws can create a domain, while a major accomplishment can establish a realm. In other words, should Tong Yi possess sufficient magical power, he could instantaneously manifest a space dominated solely by thunder. Indeed, he has augmented his means of self-preservation. After carefully assessing his progress, Tong Yi felt a sense of elation, and his consciousness departed from the system space. Together with his primordial spirit, he absorbed the sound of the Tao, encapsulated in the phrase "the primordial chaos is timeless." 3,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, within the Zixiao Palace, besides the resonating sounds of the saint's teachings, one could occasionally hear the sounds of shackles being broken, emanating from numerous powerful beings within the hall. The reason was quite simple. As they comprehended the teachings and gained profound insights, they refined their foundations and rectified past deficiencies in their Tao. With their foundations solidified, the bottlenecks that had constrained them for countless years naturally began to loosen. Moreover, the palace was suffused with the immense spiritual energy of Zixiao, cleansing their primordial spirits and celestial bodies, making it exceedingly difficult not to break through. Tong Yi was no exception. Although he had perfected the Tao beneath the true immortal level, after his primordial spirit absorbed the sound of the Tao, it swelled exponentially. Consequently, his cultivation naturally ascended from the early stage of Tai Golden Immortal to 2 minor realms, reaching the late stage of Tai Golden Immortal. His 5 internal organs successfully fused with the 4, aligning the 4 energies towards the primordial source, leaving him just 1 step away from the pinnacle. On this day, as Hongjun Daozu concluded his final words, the sound of the Tao dissipated, and the extraordinary phenomena within the palace came to an abrupt halt. 3,000 years had passed, marking the end of the first transmission of the Tao. 3,000 years later, the second transmission of the Tao commenced. At this moment, Haotian Yaoqi, who had been seated in meditation beneath the Tao platform, suddenly stood and spoke. Tong Yi opened his eyes. Before he could entertain the thought of slipping away, the voice of Hongjun resonated in his ears. "Follow me." A sense of foreboding washed over Tong Yi. Alas, his master was undoubtedly preparing to settle scores come autumn. In Chapter 35, news of the 6-eared macaque surfaced, and Tong Yi's mind raced. Alas, the old man was indeed set on settling accounts. Tong Yi lamented internally. Yet before he could formulate a refusal, he heard Hongjun's next words, regarding the 6-eared macaque. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi felt a buzzing in his head, and his eyes sparkled with realization. The 6-eared macaque. Indeed, he had nearly forgotten. Wasn't he it during the first sermon that the creature eavesdropped using its innate abilities, failing to reach the Zixiao Palace, only to be discovered and punished by the Tao ancestor? Hence the saying, the teachings are not to be imparted to the 6 ears. Logically, this event should have transpired. However, it had not. This time, the sermon went exceedingly well. Yet now, his master had suddenly mentioned the 6-eared macaque. This could only imply one thing. The 6 ears were still eavesdropping. Yet due to him, his master had neither interrupted the sermon nor punished the 6 ears before the multitude of great beings. Reflecting on this, Tong Yi felt a swell of emotion, coupled with curiosity about Hongjun's intentions and the whereabouts of the 6 ears. The system had previously indicated that his bloodline was merely a quarter of that of the primordial chaos demon ape. Could he possibly devour the bloodline of the 6-eared macaque? How would he do so? Would the 6-eared macaque perish because of him? With a myriad of questions swirling in his mind, Tong Yi hesitated not a moment. After Hongjun departed from the Tao platform, he too vanished without a trace. At that instant, the 3,000 great beings within the grand hall gradually awakened from their meditative state. Is it over? How could it be so swift? No. I was on the verge of a breakthrough. Finally, I have broken through. This accursed bottleneck has hindered me for countless epochs. Woohoo! We bid farewell to the sage. Thank you, sage, for the teachings. We shall surely impart today's enlightenment to all beings. Instantly, the grand hall erupted in a cacophony. The expressions of the 3,000 great beings varied. Some, unsatisfied because they were so close to a breakthrough, eagerly pleaded for more. Others, overwhelmed with joy for having shattered a bottleneck that had lasted for years, wept tears of elation. The majority expressed their sincere gratitude to the sage for the teachings. Yet when they finally came to their senses, the sage upon the Tao platform had already departed, along with the false sage, who had vanished without a trace. Only the 2 celestial attendants of the Haotian Yaoqi remained by the entrance, signaling for them to leave. Many of the great beings, who had wished to converse with the sage, were filled with regret. They longed for the passage of 3,000 years to arrive immediately, but for now, they had to take their leave. 2 celestial attendants. Might I inquire about the origins of that primordial Taoist? Does he possess a dwelling in the primordial wilderness? Yaoqi Fairy, I humbly greet you. I believe that Taoist Hunyuan and I are destined to connect in the West. Might you assist in introducing us? Taoist Haotian. This is my communication jade talisman. Could you kindly deliver it to Taoist Hunyuan? There are indeed mighty beings who are unwilling to resign themselves. Before departing from the Grand Hall, they conversed with Hao Yin of the Yaoqi, seeking information about Tong Yi. Their intent is to forge a bond with Tong Yi. Regardless of whether Tong Yi previously masqueraded as a sage to play tricks on others, he remains a disciple of the sage, a direct disciple, no less. This identity is one that commands respect wherever it may be. Previously unaware of the sage's true nature, they now perceive the immense pressure emanating from Hongjun and resonate with the sound of the Tao. They increasingly comprehend the chasm between themselves and the sage. If direct contact with the sage is unattainable, then engaging with his direct disciples will suffice. After all, this disciple may very well become the next sage. By that time, they shall find it impossible to curry favor. However, faced with these powerful beings who either inquired, pleaded, or presented treasures, both Hao Yin and Yaoqi maintained their stoic expressions. Silent as statues, the multitude of mighty beings exchanged glances, ultimately resigning with deep sighs, retracting their bribes of heavenly materials and treasures, and leaving the Grand Hall in despair. Humph, you think you can ingratiate yourselves with my senior brother? You crafty old men, do not lead my senior brother astray. Once all the mighty beings had departed, the Yaoqi fairy child stuck out her tongue at the grand door, letting out a huff. Hao Yin nodded in agreement. Humph, my senior brother has yet to bestow upon them the opportunities meant for the two of us, and they wish to seize them. Not a chance. Oh, where are the master and senior brother? Let us see where they have gone. Master seems to favor his disciple over the fairy children. The two little fairy children chattered away, scurrying towards the back door of the grand hall. At this moment, in a garden behind the hall, Tong Yi could not contain his curiosity as he approached Hongjun. Master, what did you mean by the six-eared macaque? Upon reaching Hongjun, who was leisurely brewing tea with wisps of fragrant steam rising from the teapot, he did not respond immediately, but instead gestured towards a nearby stone chair. Tong Yi, feeling a bit helpless, took a seat obediently. Your mind is restless, much like a mischievous monkey. If I am not mistaken, with the convergence of the five energies and the closure of the heart's qi, you will find it difficult to cultivate successfully. Hongjun, placing a fragrant cup of tea before Tong Yi, spoke softly. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi's eyes widened in realization. He immediately turned his focus inward to his dantian and was taken aback. Over the past 3 millennia, his cultivation had steadily progressed, and he now stood at the pinnacle of the Tai Golden Immortal stage. Only one organ remained, his heart, corresponding to the fire element. This presents quite the conundrum. The 4 mischievous monkeys each correspond to the primordial forces of the universe, embodying one of the elemental attributes of earth, wind, water, and fire. As a long-armed gibbon, he was birthed from the 9 heavens flame crystal, representing the essence of fire. Yet, while the other elements, metal, wood, water, and earth, have been successfully refined, he finds himself lacking in the fusion of his heart with the divine, the crucial ignition of fire. It was only through his master's subtle guidance that he became aware of this oversight, which sent a wave of unease through Tong Yi. After all, the most significant flaw is the one we are oblivious to. Could it be that, over the past 3 millennia, he should have successfully converged the 5 energies and ascended to the realm of Deluo, yet has been impeded by his own ignorance? But his master has discerned this? Contemplating this, Tong Yi turned to look at Hongjun, his eyes filled with admiration and perplexity. However, Hongjun remained silent. It was then that Tong Yi noticed the teacup before him, and he instinctively lifted it to his lips, taking a hearty sip. Please, master, enlighten me. The tea was exquisite, invigorating his senses, yet Tong Yi gulped it down hastily, casting a pitiful glance at Hongjun. To his surprise, Hongjun continued to smile enigmatically. Gesturing toward the teacup, Tong Yi, puzzled, looked down only to find the cup mysteriously refilled. What on earth? Is this old man playing tricks on me or engaging in some divine jest? Tong Yi scratched his head, utterly bewildered by the meaning behind this. He could only beseech Hongjun, Master, I was wrong. I should not have impersonated you, nor meddled in the affairs of Hongyun. Please, have mercy and reveal to me why I cannot refine the heart's essence and where the 6-eared macaque is located. Chapter 36, Hongjun's Teachings. The manifestation of the will of heaven, the matter of the 6-eared macaque, can wait. Your predicament is more pressing. Tell me, what does it mean that heaven and earth are unkind, treating all beings as mere fodder? Hongjun gently waved his fan. In the clay furnace, the charcoal glowed. The lid of the copper kettle bubbled, and steam spiraled into the air. In this moment, he resembled an ordinary old farmer, boiling water for tea, devoid of any semblance of a sage. Upon witnessing this, Tong Yi's mind buzzed with realization. He finally understood that Hongjun's cryptic demeanor was not a form of mockery nor reproach, but rather a profound lesson intended for him. Taking a deep breath, Tong Yi's expression grew solemn as he gazed at the clay furnace, the charcoal, the copper kettle, and the rising steam. Pondering the meaning behind Hong Jun's words, heaven and earth are unkind, treating all beings as mere fodder. Coincidentally, he had encountered an annotation of this phrase in his previous life, though he was uncertain of its accuracy. Nevertheless, he spoke. Fodder refers to sacrificial offerings made from grass and wood, which are discarded once used. Thus, this phrase implies that heaven and earth do not bestow kindness, allowing all beings to live and perish on their own. As soon as he uttered these words, the garden, once resonating with the sounds of chirping insects, the rustling of leaves and grass, and the crackling of charcoal, fell abruptly silent. The very fabric of time and space in this realm seemed to be frozen in place. Even the hand of the venerable Hong Jun, lightly waving a fan, trembled suddenly. He turned to face his eager disciple, whose thirst for knowledge was palpable. The astonishment in his heart was beyond words. As a master, it would be a dereliction of duty to accept a direct disciple without imparting wisdom. Thus, Hong Jun held little resentment towards Tong Yi's previous frivolities. He merely regarded this monkey as a stubborn stone, utterly ignorant. Any errors committed were ultimately his own shortcomings as a mentor. Hence, the earlier incident was intended solely for the purpose of proper instruction. However, Hong Jun had not anticipated that Tong Yi would pose such a direct question regarding the profound truths of the Tao. To his astonishment, the monkey answered in an instant. It is worth noting that he had posed the same question to the celestial beings of Yao Qi and Hao Yin before, yet their answers were utterly incorrect. Otherwise, how could the two celestial youths have remained mere children under his guidance for so long? This left Hong Jun both astonished and at a loss. He had hoped to use this opportunity to instill lasting wisdom in the monkey. But now, was he merely complicating things for himself? Whoosh, whoosh. Master, what are you and senior brother doing hiding here? Are you enjoying some delicious treats? At that moment, a melodious voice of playful reproach rang out. The two celestial youths, Yao Qi and Hao Yin, scampered over with their little legs, arriving at the stone table and catching sight of the tea within the cup. Yao Qi's eyes sparkled. Wow, it's enlightenment tea. Master is indeed partial. Though she spoke thus, Yao Qi did not dare to touch the tea, instead standing obediently beside Hao Yin. Ah, just in time. Let's see how well the three of you can respond to this. Heaven and earth are unfeeling, treating all beings as mere fodder. What should the next line be? Upon noticing Yao Qi and Hao Yin's arrival, Hong Jun's thoughts sparked, and he devised a strategy, speaking up. Oh dear, Master is going to test us again. The previously beaming Yao Qi's face fell instantly, turning into a grimace. Had she known that Master was testing senior brother, she would have certainly refrained from coming. Each of Master's questions was exceedingly challenging, and she had always answered incorrectly, leading her to doubt her own understanding. For instance, this time, she couldn't even comprehend the question, let alone respond. Hao Yin, upon hearing the question, also furrowed his brow and scratched his head in confusion. Only Tong Yi, with his gaze lowered, began to ponder the memories of his past life. Since embarking on the path of cultivation, the memories of his previous existence appeared to him like a series of vivid images, each detail readily accessible. The sage is unfeeling, treating all beings as mere fodder. Tong Yi's lips moved slightly as he articulated the next line. The original phrase referred to the common people, but he adjusted it, substituting common people with all beings. This can resonate more profoundly with the vast expanse of the primordial heavens. A hum reverberated through the air. At the utterance of these words, the heavens and earth echoed in harmony. An extraordinary phenomena unfolded. Hong Jun suddenly stiffened, while the Yao Qi Hao Yin, who had been deep in thought, stood there in a daze. Above the horizon, golden vines descended, entwining around Tong Yi. Around the stone chair where he sat, golden lotuses began to bloom. Moreover, the skies above the Zixiao Palace were suddenly stirred by tumultuous winds, condensing into a mass of golden clouds. From the depths of the cloud layer, a colossal eye emerged, its gaze indifferent and devoid of emotion. It fixated on Tong Yi, as if seeking to peer into his very soul. An anomaly. Suddenly, a distant voice descended from the heavens, resonating throughout the Zixiao Palace. The immense eye, though voiceless, conveyed its intent with clarity. Upon hearing this, the assembly was roused. The will of the heavenly Tao. Hao Yin exclaimed in disbelief. It's over. Brother, you have drawn the attention of the heavenly Tao. Yao Qi exclaimed, her countenance drained of color, covering her mouth in alarm. The two celestial youths internally cried out in disbelief. How could their senior brother continually surpass their thresholds of astonishment? It was merely a question posed during their scholarly exchange. How could he have provoked the heavenly Tao? And to claim he is an anomaly. Yet Tong Yi, quick to respond, was unlike Hao Yin and Yao Qi, who could only exclaim in panic. As the voice of the colossal eye resonated, the power of spatial laws emanated from Tong Yi. In the next moment, he had shielded Hong Jun with his body, shouting, Master, save me. It was not without reason he was in such a frenzy. Tong Yi truly did not anticipate that a simple inquiry between master and disciple could summon the will of the heavenly Tao. This was the will of the heavenly Tao, which had previously unleashed 49 bolts of purple tribulation thunder upon him, filled with malice. Now, having manifested itself, it declared him an anomaly, and Tong Yi sensed no benevolence from it. At this juncture, he could only place his hopes on his master. Of course, he also secretly considered whether, if he utilized the system, he might land a blow on the will of the heavenly Tao. If he could, the feedback would undoubtedly be bountiful. Alas, in this moment, survival was paramount. He could not afford to entertain thoughts of feedback. Master, save your beloved disciple. Tong Yi clung to Hong Jun like an octopus, his hands tightly grasping around Hong Jun's neck, his legs wrapped around his waist, repeatedly imploring. Fortunately, his master was quite understanding. Although Hong Jun's face was ashen, he met the gaze of the colossal eye in the sky. He has successfully transcended his tribulation. According to our wager, you should not have appeared. Upon hearing this, Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback. What does this mean? Did master have a wager with the heavenly Tao? A wager concerning me? Well then, you old schemer. I question why I had to endure such numerous tribulations without cause. It seemed as though you were wagering my fate against the will of the heavens. This is profoundly disheartening. The celestial gaze of the Tao remained silent for a brief moment upon hearing Hong Jun's words. In that fleeting interval, the entire cosmos fell into a profound silence. The vast expanse of the heavenly pool dared not exhale, its occupants wide-eyed, observing the unfolding scene. Eventually, as if conceding, the indifferent voice of the celestial gaze resounded once more. The grand trajectory is immutable, yet the minor paths can be altered. With that proclamation, the strange phenomenon vanished, and the colossal gaze abruptly disappeared, along with the invisible pressure that weighed upon Tong Yi and the inhabitants of the heavenly pool. With a sigh of relief, the inhabitants of the heavenly pool collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Master, how could the will of the heavens manifest? What did his previous statement imply? Chapter 37. Hong Jun presents a dilemma. Seek the six-eared one. What is the reason behind all this? Master, please speak. Master. Tong Yi remained clinging anxiously to Hong Jun's back, his face a portrait of worry, incessantly questioning. Looking on, Hao Qian's lips twitched. Brother, you are choking the master. How can he respond? Yao Qi chuckled. Brother, you possess such a timid spirit. Startled, Tong Yi hastily released his grip and leaped down from behind Hong Jun, his expression somewhat awkward. Hong Jun turned, casting a reproachful glance at his errant disciple. Being a sage, he was naturally impervious to Tong Yi's grasp. On the contrary, he refrained from making any sudden movements, fearing he might inadvertently injure the arms of this troublesome disciple. You truly are a mischief maker. I must ask you, how did you conceive that profound statement that only a sage could comprehend? Hong Jun sighed. Before accepting disciples, he had prepared himself mentally. Yet, he never anticipated that the extraordinary would prove so troublesome. The celestial will, which had never before manifested, had taken form. Upon hearing Hong Jun's words, Tong Yi was momentarily speechless, unsure how to respond. He realized the reason behind this predicament was rather simple. His previous answer had been derived from the Tao Te Ching, a scripture penned by Laozi after his ascension to sagehood. As a mere Tai golden immortal, he had spoken it forth directly, thus invoking the celestial anomaly. Alas, the tribulations of traversing time weighed heavily on his conscience. With a sheepish sigh, Tong Yi replied, I do not know. I simply answered from the heart. Hong Jun, upon hearing this cliched response, nearly lost his composure and rolled his eyes. Very well. You heard the words of the celestial will just now. It fears you might alter the celestial patterns further, establishing rules for you. Do not err again, is that clear? Hong Jun concluded with a tone of caution, as if negotiating. Tong Yi, though somewhat perplexed, nodded vigorously. I hope you truly grasp this. Hong Jun returned to his stone seat and gestured toward the opposite side. Tong Yi obediently sat back down. Hao Tian skillfully approached Hong Jun's side, adding fuel to the fire and fanning the flames. Since you can articulate the principles of the Tao, it is evident that you comprehend the underlying truths. You must strive for the unity of knowledge and action. For a moment, Hong Jun was at a loss as to how to instruct this impetuous disciple. His inquiry regarding the indifference of heaven and earth, treating all beings as mere fodder, was intended to enlighten this wayward student. All creatures, like fodder, possess their own destinies, from birth to demise. Even the karmic ties of Red Cloud are predestined. The aim was to deter this wayward disciple from interference. However, since he already grasped the reasoning, how could he be taught further? As for your question, it is akin to brewing tea, where all 5 elements are essential and none can be omitted. To resolve your dilemma, remember this phrase: dull the sharpness, unravel the entanglements, harmonize the light, and mingle with the dust. After the next discourse, should you still be in the dark, Your master shall reveal to you the deeper truth. Now, this is where the six-eared resides. You may proceed. Hong Jun, the Dao ancestor, did not indulge in further obfuscation. He concluded directly, waving his right hand, causing a compass to flutter into Tong Yi's grasp. In an instant, his figure flickered and vanished. Tong Yi remained seated, lost in thought, contemplating his master's earlier words. He cast his gaze upon the teacup before him, raised it, and took a sip. The tea had lost its initial warmth and was now quite cool, yet it could not dispel the confusion within him. So, what must one do to merge the heart with the divine, to embody all five elements, and to summon the quintessence? Sigh, never mind. I shall seek out the six-eared first. Tong Yi mused, regarding the compass in his hand. There is no rush for breakthroughs. The priority is to locate the six-eared and reclaim a quarter of the bloodline's essence. By the way, I have been so preoccupied that I forgot to ask. Where's Hutu? Tong Yi inquired of the two celestial youths engaged in tea preparation. She left after consulting with the Lord that day and did not remain to listen to the teachings. Yao Qi replied, without turning her head. Oh, Tong Yi pondered. Huda must have received her answer, though it may not be what she desired. Alas, each has their own destiny. For instance, I have a multitude of matters at hand. Tong Yi ceased his musings and asked again. So, will you both accompany me to the primordial chaos? To his surprise, both Hao Tian and Yao Qi shook their heads in unison. The Lord said my cultivation is unstable and requires consolidation. Yao Qi lamented with a troubled expression. Brother, I have just broken through and must also stabilize my realm, Hao Tian added with a face full of regret. After 3,000 years of listening to the teachings, other great beings have advanced in their cultivation. Naturally, Hao Tian has as well, now having ascended to the realm of great beings. Stepping into the domain of the great Luo Golden Immortal. The next discourse will arrive soon, so he must solidify his foundation. Otherwise, he would truly wish to accompany Tong Yi to the primordial chaos. No matter, I will go and return promptly, Tong Yi remarked, finding this reasoning acceptable. Having attained the status of a Tai Golden Immortal, coupled with a mastery of the Thunder Law, I am sufficiently equipped to traverse the chaos independently. With a crackling sound, golden arcs of lightning enveloped Tong Yi, and in an instant, he vanished into the chaos like a bolt of lightning. Is that the Thunder Law? Yao Qi gazed in awe at the disappearing streak of lightning, murmuring to herself. Typically, the power of the great Dao laws can only be comprehended after reaching the 5 Qi, returning to origin and ascending to the great Luo Golden Immortal stage, where one condenses a flower of understanding. Even she, having recently attained the great Luo stage, had yet to grasp any significant Dao laws. Yet Tong Yi, he shattered all conventions. He had previously comprehended the law of space, and now he had mastered the Thunder Law. Experiencing the aura of destruction emanating from the thunder up close, even Yao Qi, as a great Luo Golden Immortal, felt a shiver of trepidation. This signified that Tong Yi's command over the Thunder Law was far beyond mere initiation. It seems we have already been surpassed by our senior brother, Hao Tian said, his mouth turning downward in a bitter frown. He had come to terms with Tong Yi's miraculous achievements. After all, even the will of the heavenly Dao had acknowledged that their senior brother was an anomaly. Even if Tong Yi were to return and attain sainthood, he could accept it. What troubled him was the realization that he might forever remain in last place. No, I must cultivate. Hao Tian seized the teapot and poured himself a cup, ignoring the scalding heat as he gulped it down. Fueled with determination, he soared towards his residence. You shall not surpass me. Seeing this, Yao Qi felt a surge of urgency. She could not be left behind. With a swift motion, she collected the entire clay furnace and tea set and flew towards her own abode. Boom! On the vast and untamed land of the Hongwang, a golden bolt of lightning flashed from the entrance of the celestial realm, instantly striking the peak of the unmoving mountain, transforming into a youth clad in a white robe. Is this Hongwang? Standing atop the unmoving mountain, Tong Yi surveyed the landscape below with curiosity. The summit provided him an unobstructed view of the entire land. Amusingly enough, despite traversing through millennia, he had yet to set foot on the vast expanse of Hongwang. His last attempt to explore had been thwarted at the 33 heavens. Buzz. At this moment, he flipped the compass bestowed by Hong Jun, which emitted a humming sound and projected an arrow pointing toward a specific location. Tong Yi's eyes brightened upon seeing that the arrow indicated a place within the unmoving mountain range. Without hesitation, he thought to himself that the scenery could wait. Finding Lu'er was of utmost importance. In a flash, he transformed into lightning and sped towards Lu'er's direction. Chapter 38. I am Lu'er. Able to listen to all things. Following the compass's guidance, Tong Yi soon arrived above a secluded valley in the unmoving mountain range, treading upon the thunder. Oh, is someone cultivating? He mused, as the power of the law of space enveloped him, rendering his form ethereal. His eyes glimmered with a purple light as he peered down, a look of astonishment gracing his features. Though the valley below is remote and the spiritual energy here is significantly sparser compared to other areas of the unmatched mountain, a striking phenomenon has abruptly manifested, a vortex of spiritual energy composed of innate gale winds. Indeed, the innate gale winds and the spiritual energy vortex, two seemingly unrelated phenomena, now coexist. The innate gale winds slice through the air like tangible blades, tearing apart the very fabric of space as they ravenously draw in spiritual energy from the void, forming a colossal vortex. As the saying goes, a mountain need not be high. It is the presence of immortals that imbues it with spirit. The source of this extraordinary occurrence lies at the vortex's center, where a faintly discernible figure resides, a small macaque with golden fur and 6 ears. Thus, does the 6 ears correspond to the wind element among earth, wind, water, and fire? My master once stated that all 5 elements must be present, none can be omitted. Does this imply that I must complete the other 3 bloodline origins to transcend to the Deluo realm? Tong Yi, intrigued, surveyed the valley below, pondering how to obtain the bloodline origin of this 6-eared macaque. Suddenly, Tong Yi's eyes narrowed with a glimmer of violet light, for he detected 2 exceedingly concealed auras within the valley. Had he not been cautious and employed the divine eye of purple mist, he would have remained oblivious. To Tong Yi's bemusement, these 2 auras belonged to familiar faces, Jane and Juanti, those shameless rogues. Their presence was understandable. After all, merely 3,000 years had elapsed since their last sermon. It was only natural that these 2 bald monks, disinclined to return to the Western world, would remain here. It appears that all is bound by cause and effect. The 6-eared macaque, having evaded the sage's punishment due to him, could not escape the covetous gaze of the Western teachings. Even in its retreat to cultivate here, it was encountered by these 2 bald figures. However, Tong Yi felt no apprehension. In the past, he would have turned and fled upon encountering Jane and Juanti, but now, having ascended to the late stage of the Tai realm and comprehended numerous laws, he possessed the strength to confront them across realms. Nonetheless, he refrained from revealing himself immediately, choosing instead to remain hidden within the void, biding his time to observe the 6-eared macaque's character. Below, outside the valley, Jane and Juanti concealed themselves within a towering ancient tree, their eyes fixed intently upon the 6-eared macaque in meditation, their gaze shimmering with fervent delight. Drawing from their years of plundering and burning, they instantly recognized the macaque's extraordinary nature. It evidently lacked any understanding of martial arts, yet could invoke phenomena through its own absorption of spiritual energy, manifesting the innate gale winds. Such a spiritual monkey, if taken under their wing, would undoubtedly become a formidable entity in the future. Hence, the 2 concealed their forms and auras, patiently awaiting the moment the 6-eared macaque concluded its cultivation. At that very moment, all phenomena within the valley vanished, leaving behind a deep pit cleaved by the wind blades, proving that the previous anomalies had indeed occurred. Why am I perpetually unable to break through? The heavens are unjust. At the bottom of the deep pit, the 6-eared macaque, halting his cultivation, roared towards the sky. His cry resonated with boundless resentment and indignation, echoing endlessly. He had clearly eavesdropped on the teachings of the saints, thus shedding his mortal form to ascend to the realm of earth immortals. Yet, for reasons unbeknownst to him, his cultivation remained stunted at the initial stage of earth immortal. The threshold to the next minor realm loomed like an insurmountable chasm. No matter how diligently he endeavored, he found it nearly impossible to transcend. If this continued, his lifespan would dwindle. Who? At that moment, the 6-eared macaque's ears twitched, his expression shifting abruptly, his fur bristling as he roared towards the outside of the valley. In the void, Tong Yi remained unfazed, possessing unwavering confidence in his spatial principles. Even as a novice, his presence was not easily detected by the average being. Otherwise, how could Yang Mei have survived? Thus, he was certain that the individual the 6-eared macaque had sensed was none other than Jane and Juanti. Indeed, after the roar of the 6-eared macaque, the direction he gazed upon was precisely where Jane and Juanti concealed themselves. Oh, have we been discovered? The hidden Jane and Juanti exchanged glances, both astonished and elated at the surprise reflected in each other's eyes. It is worth noting that they were none other than great Luo golden immortals. Their deliberate concealment of form and aura could still be sensed by this mere earth immortal monkey. A fortuitous sign. This indicates that the monkey's talent surpasses their expectations. Today, they must secure him. With this thought, Jane and Juanti exchanged a knowing glance, their movements synchronized. In the next moment, their tattered robes transformed into 2 radiant, treasure-like Taoist garments. Their appearances also shifted from gaunt and emaciated to flushed and robust. Once they had completed their transformation, they no longer concealed themselves. stepping through the void until they stood before the warily alert six-eared macaque. Jane joined his hands in prayer, his demeanor dignified. As he spoke in a calm voice, "Little macaque, there is no need for alarm. I am Jane from the West, and this is Taoist Juanti." Taoist Juanti displayed a benevolent smile, saying, "Little macaque, you are destined to be connected with our Western lineage. Your current cultivation obstacles stem from a lack of methods." Jane nodded in agreement, "And we happened to pass by, indicating that this is your opportunity to join our ranks. Take refuge in our teachings, and we shall bestow upon you the methods that will undoubtedly aid you in breaking through your shackles and achieving true fruit." Each spoke in turn, their delivery remarkably practiced. They first identified the shortcomings of the six-eared macaque, then articulated how they could assist in his cultivation, subtly exuding an oppressive aura that enveloped him. Their rhetoric was comprehensive and persuasive. Had it been an ordinary being, they would surely have succumbed. However, the two did not perceive the slightest hint of joy on the face of the six-eared macaque, which might indicate that it had garnered the attention of a formidable being. Instead, they remained vigilant. In the next moment, the words spoken by the six-eared macaque astonished both Jane and the hidden Tong in the void above. "There are others. Step forward." The six-eared macaque's 6 ears trembled with an unusual frequency as it bared its teeth and roared towards another direction outside the valley. Upon hearing this declaration, Juanti raised an eyebrow, a flicker of murderous intent flashing in his eyes, nearly shattering his facade of compassion. "May I inquire who this esteemed friend might be? Why resort to stealth?" Jane, suppressing the nearly overflowing murderous intent of Juanti, turned to gaze in the direction of the six-eared macaque, speaking in a calm manner. At that moment, Tong, concealed in the celestial void, felt ripples of unease in his heart. He had thought himself discovered, only to realize there were indeed others present. The pressing question was, who lurked in the shadows, unnoticed even by his divine purple sky eye? Had the six-eared macaque uncovered them instead? Contemplating this, he too turned his gaze towards the direction of the six-eared macaque, his eyes shimmering with purple light. In the next instant, a massive boulder outside the valley revealed 2 inyong fishes, one black and one white, swirling from its center. Subsequently, 2 silhouettes quietly emerged. As the inyong fishes spun, the once ordinary boulder twisted and vanished, revealing a man and a woman. The man was tall and robust, with a rugged appearance, while the woman was statuesque and exquisite in beauty. "Humph, what treachery is this? Mount Buzhou is the birthplace of my brother and me. You 2 bald donkeys are the true outsiders, trying to deceive these little spiritual beasts." Upon their emergence, Nuwa confronted Jane with indignation. Fushi stood quietly behind her, holding the innate 8 trigrams, his gaze calmly fixed on Jane and Juanti, embodying the role of a protective brother. As Nuwa stated, the siblings had indeed emerged from the Buzhou Mountains, with their cave dwelling established there. Although this valley was exceedingly remote, the emergence of the innate gale acted as a butterfly effect, stirring the feng shui of the entire Buzhou mountain range, which Fushi detected immediately. He concealed their presence and brought Nuwa to investigate. To their astonishment, even with the formation laid by the innate 8 trigrams to mask their aura, they had still been discovered. Fushi looked towards the 6-eared macaque behind Jane and Juanti, his eyes flickering with interest. This macaque, with its adorable appearance and terrifying talents, would make an excellent pet for his sister. At that moment, upon witnessing the arrival of Nuwa and Fushi and hearing Nuwa's rather impolite remarks, the compassionate expressions on Jane and Juanti's faces began to strain. Detecting Fushi's gaze, Juanti's heart brimmed with vigilance as she sheltered the 6-eared macaque behind her. "Who are we?" It turned out to be the esteemed Taoist friends, Fushi and Nuwa. In my moment of panic, I spoke ungraciously. "I kindly ask you, Nuwa, not to take offense." However, the Taoist Jane swiftly regained composure, restoring his benevolent demeanor as he bowed and smiled at Nuwa. One does not strike a smiling face. Faced with Jane's approach, Nuwa's initial ire, sparked by her revealed presence, began to dissipate. Yet, Jane's next words darkened her expression. "Esteemed friends, this little monkey has already taken refuge in the West with me. Since all is but a misunderstanding, we shall take our leave." Upon finishing, Jane hastily elbowed Juanti, who then waved her sleeve, ensnaring the 6-eared macaque. In an instant, they aimed to soar towards the west. Buzz! In the next moment, a primordial 8 trigrams formation suddenly emerged. This realm was enveloped by the formation, shrouding the heavens and the earth. Simultaneously, the formation displayed the characters DUI Air. Jane and Juanti, who had already departed swiftly, felt a sudden distortion ahead. In the blink of an eye, their figures flickered, and they found themselves back in their original position. A formation. Jane and Juanti were initially taken aback. Juanti tightened her sleeve, firmly restraining the 6-eared macaque, while Jane gazed at Fushi, who stood behind Nuwa, and spoke with a tone laden with admiration Your mastery of formations, esteemed friend, is unparalleled among the 3,000 great ones. This praise was not without sincerity. Jane's voice bore no trace of benevolence, but instead was filled with caution. He had not anticipated the intricacy of Fushi's formation. It was one thing to conceal their presence. It was quite another to have set up such a formidable array unbeknownst to them, making their departure exceedingly difficult. Yet, the more formidable the formation, the stronger Jane and Xuanti's desire to claim this monkey grew. It was merely a formation. They were not incapable of breaching it. However, breaking the formation required time. Moreover, they wished to avoid a true confrontation with Fushi and Nuwa, for the strength of Fushi and Nuwa was on par with their own. Should a conflict arise, they risked injury, and injury was the greatest fear of Jane and Xuanti. They were acutely aware of their past transgressions. An injury could attract countless enemies, and a moment's carelessness could lead to their demise. Thus, they resolved to employ a delaying tactic, feigning dialogue with Fushi while secretly devising a method to break the formation. With this thought in mind, Jane continued, "But may I inquire why you treat us thus? It is known that the two of us, as brothers, share the same 6 great mats with Taoist friend Nuwa. In the future, we may even become fellow disciples. Let us not jeopardize our harmony." Indeed, upon hearing the words of the guide, Fushi, holding the primordial 8 trigrams plate, narrowed his eyes. Throughout his life, the most precious to him was his sister. The remarks of the guide struck a chord deep within his heart. The 6 great cushions of the Purple Sky Palace, what profound fortune do they represent? The 3,000 mighty beings have speculated endlessly, yet a consensus exists among many. It is conceivable that the Tao ancestor intends to accept disciples, with the 6 cushions signifying 6 chosen students. Fushi, too, found merit in this conjecture. Consequently, the murderous intent within him diminished significantly due to the guide's words. "Brother, do not heed his nonsense. Those cushions were obtained through despicable means. The most they can offer is a fleeting blessing during the sermon. I refuse to believe that the Tao ancestor would accept individuals of your ilk as disciples." Nuwa interjected disdainfully. "Since time immemorial, in the vast wilderness, an unwritten rule has prevailed. Whether it be treasures or spiritual beasts, the worthy and capable shall claim them. Yet, what of these two before her?" Nuwa, disinclined to engage in further dialogue with the guide and Xuanti, turned her gaze toward the struggling 6-eared macaque and gently inquired, "Little monkey, have you consented to become their spirit pet?" Upon hearing Nuwa's sudden question, Xuanti internally cursed, having forgotten to seal the monkey's senses. Before he could act, the 6-eared macaque screamed, "No, I refuse. A true man born of heaven and earth cannot be shackled under the rule of shameless individuals." At that moment, the 6-eared macaque was engulfed in a torrent of fury. From the moment the guide and Xuanti appeared, he recognized them. During the Tao ancestor's sermon, he had utilized his innate divine abilities to listen to everything within the Purple Sky Palace. Thus, he was fully aware of the unscrupulous actions of these 2 scoundrels. The heart of the 6-eared macaque soared higher than the heavens. How could he possibly submit to such despicable beings? Furthermore, their twisting of truth was infuriating. He had never consented, yet they forcefully sought to abduct him. The 6-eared macaque resolutely opposed such a fate. He already understood that his inability to advance was due to a lack of cultivation methods. Thus, he would seek out other mighty beings for guidance. He had heard that the kind-hearted Hongyun de Xian of the Fire Cloud Cave was virtuous and benevolent. Becoming his disciple would undoubtedly be a splendid choice. Damn it, this monkey is utterly foolish. Upon hearing the vehement protests of the 6-eared macaque, the guide and Xuanti could not help but feel a surge of anger. In their eyes, the 6-eared macaque was utterly ungrateful. To be accepted as their disciple would be an unparalleled opportunity for the monkey. To defy them in front of Nuwa and Fushi was indeed audacious. "Did you hear that? He refuses. According to the rules, you must release him, allowing him to choose for himself." Fushi stepped forward, channeling the power of the Grand Formation, which coalesced into 2 yin-yang fish. The white fish spiraled through the skies, while the black fish swam through the depths below. The supreme pressure descended upon the gathering of the guiding figures. "Halt, fellow Taoists. Let us proceed according to the established rules." Upon witnessing this scene, the guiding figure was taken aback. The intricacies of this grand formation were still beyond his comprehension, and with his delaying tactic having failed, he could only concede to Fushi immediately. However, this did not signify their defeat. In the guiding figure's perspective, the reason why the 6-eared macaque had not acquiesced was due to ignorance of their powers and riches. It is well known that they had seized the remnants of the former demon sect and acquired numerous valuable treasures. A demonstration would surely convince the little miscreant. Thus, rounding up the circumstances, the advantage lay with them. Hearing this, the guiding figure could only relent, waving his right hand. The 6-eared macaque was freed, landing on the open ground between the 2 parties. "Little monkey, choose whom to follow. no one shall impose upon you," said Nuwa with a charming smile directed at the six-eared macaque. Suddenly, a whooshing sound pierced the air. "Hold on. Fair shares for all. This humble Taoist wishes to test his fortune as well." A figure appeared, a monkey adorned in a tiger skin skirt, donning a bronze monkey mask. Wielding a dark long staff over his shoulder, with fiery red fur covering his entire body, striding with great confidence. Chapter 40. The 9 palaces break the 8 trigrams. "Why was I born with 6 ears? What?" exclaimed Fushi, Nuwa, the guiding figure, and the other as they turned in astonishment. There are other entities? They had only just realized the presence of another upon hearing the voice. Strangely, the presence emanating from this newcomer was merely that of a Tai golden immortal. Meanwhile, the 6-eared macaque, who was on the verge of making a choice, trembled incessantly, its eyes wide with confusion. It could not discern when this fellow of its kind had appeared. Even now, as the newcomer approached step by step, its innate powers seemed to falter, rendering it incapable of hearing any sound from the approaching figure. Why was this so? "Stop right there," Fushi commanded sharply, directing his gaze towards the slowly advancing monkey. Initially, this little monkey was to be subdued by his sister. Being interrupted suddenly was, of course, displeasing to him. The peculiar arrival of this being was an unforeseen variable. He would not allow anyone to thwart his sister's opportunity. With this thought, Fushi disregarded the origin of the monkey and swiftly turned the innate 8 trigrams disc in his hand. The formation shifted from offense to defense. The originally manifested yin-yang fish that dominated the heavens and earth retreated into the formation. Buzz! In the next moment, a barrier of the grand formation emerged, enveloping the 4 of them and the monkey, isolating them from the outside world. "Humph! Little monkey, what more do you gaze upon? Make your choice." As the protective light of the formation appeared, Fushi urged the 6-eared macaque. In his view, with the innate 8 trigrams formation providing isolation, the newcomer would not be considered a witness. He, Fushi, had not violated any rules. Did the newcomer still wish to lay claim to his sister's fortune? Such a dream would remain unfulfilled. Nuwa and Jane Juanti turned their attention away from the monkeys outside the formation, their hearts brimming with joy. They believed that Fushi had meticulously arranged the grand array at the perfect moment. Fortune is a fickle companion. The presence of an additional person only introduces further variables. With that monkey absent, this little monkey now belonged to them. As for breaking the formation, Nuwa had unwavering faith in her brother's grand array, while Jane Juanti was convinced that even they could not dismantle this bagua formation. Thus, they collectively deemed that the monkey wielding a fire stick, oblivious to transformation, posed no threat. Oh, how underestimated he was. Outside the formation, clad in a tiger skin skirt and wielding a celestial measuring rod that transformed into a long staff, the monkey chuckled helplessly. Who else could he be but Tong-yi? Once the 6-eared macaque was subdued, reclaiming the bloodline's essence would become a challenge. Hence, Tong-yi made his appearance. However, after being outsmarted by Yang Mei, he had become considerably more cautious, opting to conceal his true visage. Thus, he transformed into his original form, donned the tiger skin skirt, and crafted a mask using the power of the thunder laws. Now, gazing upon the innate bagua formation before him, Tong-yi remained utterly unperturbed. To breach the formation, he had 3 methods at his disposal. The first was simply utilizing the system, delivering a straightforward and brute force punch. However, the system was limited to once a day, and he preferred to reserve it as a trump card. The second option was to employ the celestial measuring rod to violently smash through the formation. This rod was the foremost treasure of innate merit, possessing the ability to shatter myriad techniques, making the task of breaking the formation trivial. Yet, since acquiring this treasure, he had lacked the time to refine its restrictions. Now in his possession, he could not unleash its full potential, which was rather awkward. Thus, he was left with only one final method, deducing the formation's weaknesses. Ironically, this approach proved to be the most effective. Although Fushi possessed a deeper understanding of the laws governing formations than Tong-yi, the innate bagua formation was not yet complete. In fact, it harbored numerous flaws. As it would unfold, Fushi would eventually recognize his shortcomings and seek assistance from Dijuan and Tai to perfect his innate bagua, subsequently creating the postnatal bagua. This chain of causation forced him into the demon clan. But what of the present? The Book of Luo was no longer available, fortuitously transforming into Tong-yi's 9 palaces deduction technique. Coincidentally, Tong-yi's comprehension of formations was also quite admirable. One might say that while Fushi's formation was challenging for others to decipher, it had fortuitously encountered Tong-yi's spearhead, 2 and 4 as shoulders, 6 and 8 as feet, 3 on the left and 7 on the right, 9 atop and 1 beneath, with 5 at the center. Tong-yi chanted incantations, stepping into the 9 palaces flying star step. With a single stride, he advanced towards the barrier of the bagua formation, declaring, "Little monkey, hear me." Within our two factions lies an abundance of treasures. Should you choose to embrace my teachings, I shall bestow upon you supreme techniques and treasures of the postnatal realm. Within the formation, to ensnare the six-eared macaque, the guiding figures of Jane and Juanty immediately manifested their might. A colossal golden lotus seed appeared beneath Jane, radiating 1,000 beams of resplendent light. In Juanty's grasp, a 7-colored treasure tree emerged, exuding a spectrum of vibrant hues. In that instant, under the blessing of the divine light, the already corpulent forms of the two figures became even more resplendent. Witnessing the abundance of treasures they possessed, and the promises made to the small monkey, Nua's brows furrowed slightly. Without a trace of hesitation, she declared, "Little monkey, I too can grant you supreme techniques and spiritual treasures. Furthermore, our abode lies within this unyielding mountain. You need not wander aimlessly. Moreover, our sanctuary is abundant with spiritual herbs and fruits, which you may partake in at your leisure." With a grand gesture, Nua spoke with great generosity. At this juncture, she cast a glance at Jane and Juanty, a spark of inspiration igniting in her mind. Her beautiful eyes gleaming with mischief as she spoke softly to the six-eared macaque. "The most important thing is, I shall honor my word. Their notorious reputation, however, may not hold the same weight." Upon hearing this, Jane and Juanty were taken aback. What had begun as a negotiation suddenly transformed into a personal affront. "Slander? Nua, you slander us," Jane exclaimed in exasperation. Unfazed, Nua beamed at the flustered duo, turning her attention back to the small monkey. "All right, little monkey you." However, her words faltered as her expression shifted. The small monkey, who was supposed to make a choice, was not gazing at her, but rather at Crack. Suddenly, a crisp sound resonated. Nua's eyelids fluttered. She hastily followed the direction of the six-eared macaque's gaze. Not only she, but also Fushi, Jane, and Juanty felt their pupils constrict, all turning their heads in unison. Boom. In the next moment, their expressions transformed, disbelief etched across their faces. The innate 8 trigrams formation had been breached. The once radiant and powerful barrier of the formation collapsed in an instant. A familiar figure emerged at this moment, treading upon an exceedingly mysterious path. In mere strides, he appeared before them. Impossible. As the formation shattered, Fushi, the one who had orchestrated it, was instantly struck by a backlash, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He felt lightheaded, and his spirit threatened to unravel. Yet, none of this mattered. His heart was filled with horror, consumed by one singular question. Who, exactly, was this monkey? How did he unravel his formation? "Brother," Nua gasped, hastily retrieving a pill to administer to Fushi. Then, with fierce determination, she glared at the monkey before her. "Who are you?" Witnessing all of this, the guide Juanty hastily suppressed the shock within his heart, no longer daring to underestimate the seemingly ordinary monkey. He promptly bowed to Tong Yi, exclaiming, "I am Juanty, a humble practitioner, and it is an honor to meet you, fellow Taoist. Might I inquire about the lineage from which you hail?" In response to their inquiries, however, Tong Yi appeared oblivious, instead directing his gaze towards the six-eared macaque among them. Beneath the bronze mask, Tong Yi's profound eyes shimmered with recognition. He addressed the six-eared macaque leisurely. "I have a reason. Why is one born with 6 ears? It is said, the 4 monkeys of the chaotic world, embodying earth, wind, water, and fire, listen to all things, and the essence of the wind reveals itself." Upon hearing these words, the six-eared macaque, who had initially been filled with reluctance, trembled all over. He fixated on the towering, enigmatic monkey before him, his youthful face etched with astonishment and anticipation. "Who are you?" the six-eared macaque stammered. "It is I," Tong Yi replied with a slight nod, his answer both affirming and elusive. Chapter 41. The Humble Traveler's Son. Without master or sect. Upon hearing Tong Yi's statement, the six-eared macaque was overwhelmed with astonishment. For among those present, he alone comprehended the meaning behind those words. They spoke to the essence of his 6 ears. The 4 monkeys of the chaotic world, embodying earth, wind, water, and fire, referred to spirit monkeys like him. 4 in total, each corresponding to a distinct attribute. Listening to all things, the essence of the wind reveals itself. Precisely articulated his innate divine ability, highlighting his wind attribute among earth, wind, water, and fire. This revelation nearly brought the six-eared macaque to tears, stirring a profound excitement akin to encountering kin. Yet, he remained somewhat cautious. Although the other appeared monkey-like, he wore a mask that suppressed his innate divine powers. Therefore, after the initial thrill, the six-eared macaque, with a trembling voice, inquired of Tong Yi, "How can this be proven?" "Oh, this little fellow is quite prudent." Tong Yi mused inwardly, amused by the response. The young macaque's demeanor reminded him of his own anxiety and trepidation upon first traversing into this world as a small monkey. Reflecting on this, Tong Yi decided against being cryptic. He summoned the nine heavens true fire that had long resided in his lower dantian. In an instant, searing crimson flames erupted from his form, intertwining with his fiery red fur, rendering him akin to a deity of fire. Fellow Taoist, who exactly are you? From whom did you learn? As the intense heat washed over them, the golden lotus beneath the guide turned slightly, and Zhuan Ti's treasured tree stirred, dissipating all the scorching waves. Yet the astonishment in the hearts of both Zhuan Ti and the guide remained undiminished. True fire. This monkey possessed genuine flames. From its silent emergence to breaking the formation, and now this nameless true fire. Amidst these myriad factors, only the presence of the Tai Golden Immortal could discern the truth. All else remains a mystery. Thus, both Jane and Zhuan Ti dared not underestimate this enigmatic monkey. They could only inquire once more about Tong Yi's origins. For them, such a powerful and mysterious monkey could not have appeared without reason. By clarifying his background, they could devise an appropriate strategy. This was the culmination of their years of experience in plunder. Those without background and lesser than them were consumed. Those without background but possessing talent were forcibly taken in. Those with a stronger background were initially spared, to be dealt with later when they had grown stronger. Those with a superior background were beseeched and flattered, while those of inferior background were engaged in wealth sharing to forge connections. At present, the monkey, though possessing strange abilities, was ultimately a Tai Golden Immortal. If this monkey had a significant background, they would rather forsake the little monkey than miss the chance to befriend him. Conversely, if this monkey lacked a substantial background, this was precisely why Jane and Zhuan were so persistently questioning Tong Yi's true identity. Cunningly lurking, yet not daring to reveal their true selves, they demanded, state your origins. Otherwise, regardless of the means by which you previously unraveled the formation, I shall vanquish you today. Upon witnessing Fushi recovering slightly after consuming the elixir, Niwa rose, turned to Tong Yi, and spoke with icy severity. Simultaneously, she produced a lotus lamp that appeared in her hand. The lamp stood 9 inches tall, pure white as ice and snow, resembling a blooming treasure lotus. Oh, is this the treasured lotus lamp? The foremost among the 4 spiritual lamps, yet regrettably, it bore no flame, rendering it seemingly inert. After giving a slight nod to the dazed 6-eared macaque, Tong Yi turned his gaze towards Niwa. Observing the lamp she held, he expressed his curiosity. Who exactly are you? Niwa's delicate form trembled, and the astonishment in her beautiful eyes deepened. This treasured lotus lamp was her most significant trump card, a formidable weapon. Almost no one knew its origins except for her brother. Yet, the other party not only named the lamp, but also pointed out its flaw. This sensation of being seen through sent a shiver down Niwa's spine. She felt a twinge of regret. For the sake of a little monkey with decent talent. Her brother had been injured today, and her trump card had been exposed. Was it worth it? Upon hearing Niwa's inquiry into his identity once more, Tong Yi felt a sense of helplessness. He understood well that the reason both parties were so eager to question his background was due to their apprehension of a formidable backing behind him. But did he truly possess such a grand background? Indeed, he did. However, the crux of the matter was that he wished to keep his lineage concealed. This appearance was precisely to ensure that revealing his identity as a disciple of a sage would be akin to exposing himself unnecessarily. Yet, there was no need for concern. He had another master. Contemplating this, Tong Yi's mind stirred. In an instant, a mysterious and elusive force of spatial laws emanated from him. Though the rain poured heavily, it failed to nourish the rootless grass. Although the Tao is vast, it is difficult to ferry those destined to cross. I am the traveler's son, unbound by any master or sect. Today, my presence is merely to connect with kindred souls. Holding a staff in one hand and performing a salute with the other, Tong Yi spoke slowly. He refrained from disclosing his master's identity, which was intentional. Some truths do not require articulation. They are self-evident. The spatial laws. Indeed, in the next moment, the 4 great beings present gasped in astonishment. They paid no heed to Tong Yi's words, relying solely on their own perceptions and conjectures. What nonsense about being unbound by a master. They had already deduced the identity of the traveler's son before them. To nurture such a disciple and comprehend the force of spatial laws, there has only been one in the entirety of the primordial heavens, from antiquity to the present. That is none other than the venerable Yang Mei, who was once renowned alongside the Tao ancestor Hongjun. Though his whereabouts have remained a mystery since the conflict with the demonic path, that does not imply his demise. Such a being could not possibly fall. He must be living in seclusion. At that moment, the 4 great beings immediately speculated in their hearts that this traveler's son was undoubtedly a disciple of Yang Mei. As for the notion of being unbound by a master, ridiculous. Not even a dog would believe such a thing. Jia and Zhuan Ti exchanged glances, each perceiving the astonishment and trepidation in the other's eyes. Niwa turned to Fushi. And although they were shrouded in secrecy, their expressions grew grave. After a brief silence, Jie and Zhuan Ti promptly declared, "Since you, Dao Friend's son, have stated it thus, let us proceed according to the rules," Zhuan Ti said. Jie added with a smile, "As you say, Dao Friend, the Dao is indeed vast. All things are connected by fate. Today's encounter with you is our destined connection." At this moment, Fuxi, with a much rosier complexion, stepped forward. After pressing down the treasure lotus lamp in Yua's hand, he bowed to Tong Yi, saying, "Your formation skills are unparalleled. Dao Friend, I am in awe. As you have suggested, let us adhere to the customs." Tong Yi immediately revealed a smile, albeit hidden beneath his mask. He raised the fire stick in hand and heartily exclaimed, "Ah, to meet is to be fated. We are indeed Dao Friends." Then, amidst a cacophony of insincere laughter, Tong Yi turned to the six-eared macaque. "Little monkey, make your choice. With whom do you share a bond?" Chapter 42. The two monkeys exchanged glances. "So, are you preparing to feast upon me? I choose him." Under the eager and hopeful gazes of Fuxi, Niuhua, Jie, and Zhuan Ti, the six-eared macaque raised his small hand and pointed at Tong Yi. Alas, it was as expected. In that instant, the four great beings' eyes dimmed, revealing their disappointment. The two parties exchanged glances, their expressions somber. To Jane and Pewdie, it seemed that had it not been for the interference of Fuxi and Niuhua, they would already have returned to the west with the spirit monkey in tow. Likewise, Fuxi and Niuhua shared this sentiment. Had it not been for the shameless antics of these two in the west, the little monkey would have already chosen Niuhua. As the two sides silently exchanged reproaches through their gazes, Tong Yi stepped forward, cradling the six-eared macaque. After a thorough inspection revealed no issues, he smiled at the four individuals and said, "I am most grateful for your courtesy today, esteemed friends. I must continue my journey and cannot linger." Upon hearing this, Jane moved to speak, but Fuxi was quicker. "Esteemed friend, our abode is nearby. Why not come and visit? I would also like to inquire about various uncertainties regarding formations." Fuxi's face was alight with eagerness. In that moment, he completely forgot all past grievances, as well as the internal wounds inflicted by the backlash of the formation. Fuxi was solely focused on uncovering how this Sun Wukong had managed to breach his defenses. Niuhua, observing this, felt a myriad of reluctance in her heart. Yet she refrained from voicing her thoughts. From the moment she came into existence until now, her brother had always prioritized her, be it treasures or opportunities. Although she was displeased by the earlier altercation with the monkey, she considered it a small price to pay for her brother's many sacrifices. Besides, she was undeniably curious about this monkey. The Taiji Golden Immortal had undoubtedly succeeded in his transformation, yet he retained his simian form. And what of the monkey mask he donned? Furthermore, how did he come to know of the Lotus Lantern? Lost in these thoughts, Niuhua found her resistance to the monkey considerably diminished. However, the next moment, her ire rekindled as Tong Yi declined Fuxi's invitation. "I appreciate your warm invitation, dear friend Fuxi. But having taken this little monkey, I must return to my sect to consult my master. Thus, I cannot stay." At this, the six-eared macaque in Tong Yi's embrace could not help but cover its face, while the expressions of the four powerful beings froze, their mouths twitching slightly. "Oh, so now the charade is over?" they thought. Just moments ago, he claimed to be without a teacher, and now he spoke of returning to his sect. How absurd. The four powerful beings silently grumbled, while Niuhua shot Tong Yi a fierce glare, her teeth grinding in frustration. To her, the monkey was utterly ungrateful. Her brother had extended such a warm invitation, and she had set aside her grievances, even compromising her own feelings to agree to his visit. Yet he had the audacity to refuse. It is worth noting that only those of the highest caliber, such as the three pure ones or the ancestor witches, could engage in discussions regarding formations with her brother. What right did this Taiji Golden Immortal monkey have to be so presumptuous? Tong Yi observed everything without a hint of hesitation. After gracefully declining Fuxi and the others, he turned and leaped into the spatial rift, vanishing in an instant. "Brother, don't linger. We must return to tend to your wounds," Niuhua said with a heavy heart, refraining from mentioning the monkey again, and helped Fuxi take flight. In this unknown valley, only Jane and Zhuan Ti remained. "Senior brother, shall we pursue them?" Zhuan Ti inquired, gesturing across his throat. In his eyes, it mattered not that they were disciples of the esteemed Yang Mei. The two brothers possessed numerous hidden cards, capable of thoroughly vanquishing this Sun Wukong without entangling themselves in karmic consequences. Even the most venerable of ancestors would find it difficult to trace their actions. They had engaged in such affairs many times before. Moreover, Zhuan Ti had initially been intimidated by Yang Mei's reputation, but now, with a calm mind, he pondered, what could Yang Mei truly accomplish? In the current primordial realm, with the illustrious reputation of Hongjun Daozu, would Yang Mei dare to emerge? Furthermore, even if they chose not to chase after the monkey, they could still pursue the siblings Fushi and Nuwa. Had it not been for them, the two would not have faced such setbacks today. With Fushi suffering from internal injuries due to backlash, the timing was indeed opportune. The treasure lamp appeared quite enticing as well. I have told you many times, the essence of cultivation lies not in conflict, but in understanding human relations. Jane gently shook his head in refusal. He gazed at the void where Tong Yi had vanished, feeling no trace of spatial residue. He couldn't help but marvel at the profundity and intricacies of spatial laws. Unfortunately, as one of the top 10 of the 3,000 great avenues, comprehending the laws of space was entirely a matter of fate. Reflecting on this, he turned to Xuanti, noticing a flicker of dissatisfaction on his face. He patiently explained, "In our pursuit of ascendance to Deluo, we disregarded everything, resulting in numerous enemies and the entanglement of our karmic burdens. Now that our cultivation has reached a sufficient level, and having obtained the opportunity of the Purple Cloud Palace's mat, we must not tread the same path again. We should engage in benevolent deeds and strive to liberate all beings." Xuanti nodded, somewhat understanding. "I hear what you say, brother." This sentiment was heartfelt. In the past, when the Western world was engulfed in suffering, the two had come together as kindred spirits. Countless gatherings had come to pass. Without Jane, he would not have reached his current stature. He would heed Jane's words. With that, the two sages spoke no more. In a flash, Jane transformed into a stream of light and vanished, leaving behind the valley ravaged by wind blades, a testament to all that had transpired. Cradling the six-eared macaque, Tong Yi utilized his spatial abilities, leaping through the void several times before transforming into a bolt of thunder and speeding away for a considerable distance. Eventually, he came to a halt above an unfamiliar mountain range in the eastern lands. Suspended in the sky, Tong Yi's eyes glimmered with violet light. Though this mountainous terrain was unremarkable, it was not small. The undulations were gentle, with a gradual slope composed of a continuous series of low hills. Fortunately, the spiritual energy here is not particularly dense, thus the presence of formidable beings is minimal. The most powerful among them is merely a celestial cow demon, making this place suitable for the survival of the six-eared macaque. With this thought, Tong Yi's figure flickered and landed amidst the forest, gently placing the six-eared macaque down. Upon touching the ground, the macaque tumbled several times, distancing itself from Tong Yi. Its youthful eyes, shimmering with a verdant light, fixed intently on Tong Yi. A look of wariness etched across its face. Tong Yi was momentarily taken aback, but soon comprehension dawned upon him. A subtle smile tugged at the corners of his mouth beneath the mask, and his eyes, glowing with a crimson hue, also regarded the six-eared macaque. The two primates locked gazes, remaining silent for an extended moment. "Thus, are you preparing to devour me?" The long-armed gibbon finally broke the silence, his voice hoarse and trembling. "Are you truly going to eat me?" The six-eared macaque exclaimed, its expression one of utter vigilance, fur bristling as it bared its teeth and claws towards Tong Yi. "Oh, ha!" Upon hearing the six-eared macaque utter such words and witnessing its adorable demeanor, Tong Yi felt an uncanny resemblance to his former self, prompting a soft chuckle to escape him. "Do you possess a system?" he inquired suddenly, his mirth momentarily fading as he fixed his gaze upon the six-eared macaque. His eyes shimmering with a violet glow. He even unleashed his consciousness, probing the macaque's emotional fluctuations. "A system? What system?" The six-eared macaque was taken aback, an unsettling chill creeping down its spine, though it did not fully grasp Tong Yi's words. It felt as if every aspect of its being had been laid bare before him. "What comes next after the bright moonlight before my bed?" Tong Yi pressed on, undeterred. "What are you doing? Are you intent on tormenting me? As a being of the same bloodline, can you not grant me a swift end?" The six-eared macaque's composure shattered. Within its bloodline lingered fragmented memories of the chaotic demon ape. Though scant, these remnants were sufficient to convey that its past life was immensely powerful. With only a quarter of that bloodline now within it, the great gibbon before it possessed the other quarter. Thus, it surmised that the gibbon had brought it here to consume its bloodline. If that were the case, why not be straightforward? Why speak in riddles and probe into its essence? Alas, it turned out you were not. Tong Yi retracted his divine consciousness with a sigh, then turned away, leaning against a nearby stone, lazily observing the six-eared macaque. With a whoosh, the mask upon his face vanished, revealing a strikingly handsome simian visage, disappointment flickering in his starry eyes. Moments ago, he had thought that the six-eared macaque might also be a transmigrant, perhaps possessing a system of its own. Thus, he chose to probe further. To his surprise, the other party was clear and pure-blooded native. Given this, Tong Yi found himself rather intrigued, knowing he needed to gather bloodlines. He wondered why this little monkey dared to follow him instead of choosing Nuwa and her companions. "How much bloodline memory do you possess?" Tong Yi inquired directly, without delay. The six-eared macaque, initially astonished by the handsome visage of the great monkey, responded without hesitation. "Not much. I know of 4 monkeys besides myself: the long-armed ape, the spirit-wise stone monkey, and the red buttock horse monkey. Sensing no murderous intent from Tong Yi, he relaxed considerably during his response, his words flowing more freely. Is that all? Tong Yi nodded slightly, then voiced his curiosity. If you know I seek unity of 4, why choose me? To his surprise, the 6-eared macaque huffed. No matter how weak I may be, I am still one of the mischievous apes. How could I be confined under them? With that, the little monkey assumed a stance with legs firmly planted and hands on his hips, gazing at Tong Yi with an air of rebelliousness. As for choosing you, it is even simpler. We share the same roots and origins, destined to unite. Finally, he thumped his chest and proclaimed loudly. Avoidance is not the style of my mischievous ape. Tong Yi stroked his chin, licking his lips, unable to conceal the amusement in his eyes. This was indeed interesting. He found himself growing fonder of this monkey. However, before he could speak, the monkey interjected. But, I have a request. Oh, pray tell. Tong Yi gestured invitingly. The 6-eared macaque glanced at the great monkey awkwardly. Then, with a hint of uncertainty, stated, I want to wager with you. Grant me 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, we shall have a decisive battle. If I am still inferior to you, then I will yield. Tong Yi, at this moment, finally comprehended what this little rascal was scheming. After all that, he still yearned for freedom. Quite clever. Once he sensed Tong Yi's lack of murderous intent, he promptly proposed a bet. As for the 10,000 years, Tong Yi believed this little trickster would surely not show up. Are you afraid, great monkey? Are you worried that I will surpass you and you won't dare accept? The 6-eared macaque, who had been keenly observing Tong Yi's expression, quickly spoke up. He noticed Tong Yi was deep in thought. That wouldn't do. If he pondered too much, he might see through his plan. 10,000 years. He was no fool. The other party was already so formidable, even surpassing Nuwa, who possessed a third of the Tao ancestors' teachings. The 6-eared macaque did not believe that. After another 10,000 years of cultivation, he could surpass Tong Yi. In his plan, he would first spend 3,000 years eavesdropping on the techniques of powerful beings, followed by another 3,000 years listening to the Tao ancestors' teachings. In the remaining 4,000 years, I shall devise a means to reach the Purple Cloud Palace and beseech the grand disciple of the Tao ancestor to become my mentor. In this manner, even the formidable great sage cannot consume me. Indeed, the reason he previously refrained from choosing Nuwa or Junti was that they could not even contend with the great sage. To align with them would ultimately lead to his demise. Thus, why not take a gamble? In Lu Er's heart, only the grand disciple of the Tao ancestor could ensure his survival. The status of a second-generation disciple at the Purple Cloud Palace would also be fitting for his lineage. Upon this reflection, the Lu Er monkey could not help but commend his own cunning. Everything was prepared. All that remained was the great sage's consent to the wager. However, the great sage's subsequent words rendered Lu Er utterly speechless. What if I told you I possess a method to extract your bloodline without harming your life, and furthermore, I could offer you another bloodline? Tong Yi regarded the Lu Er monkey with a serious demeanor, devoid of the previous jest. What? The Lu Er monkey felt a sudden buzz in his mind, as if struck by lightning, standing frozen in disbelief before Tong Yi. Are you saying I will not die, and I can continue my cultivation? Tong Yi nodded slightly. At that moment, he too felt the intricacies of cause and effect. For the 4 chaotic monkeys to unify and return to their origin, the other 3 would inevitably have to be devoured. There was no other way. Yet, in a mysterious turn of fate, he had become the great sage, awakening the shattering system. After breaking through to the late stage of the Tai Golden Immortal, his mastery over the spatial laws had evolved from clumsiness to subtle manipulation. Coupled with the aid of divine consciousness, he could precisely shatter the Lu Er monkey's bloodline without endangering his foundation. As for providing the other party with a powerful bloodline, let us not forget that within his system's space, there resided the bloodline of the Kunping. That ancient being's bloodline was not to be underestimated. Had it not been for the chaos and the opponent's underestimation, along with the support of the system and spatial laws, he would not have been able to shatter it. If Lu Er found it unappealing, he could always return to the place of his birth, the eternal Fire Mountain. Was it not said that there resided a phoenix in the Yaopool? One of the 3 divine beasts could also suffice. The only question that remained was whether Lu Er the monkey was willing to relinquish his bloodline and innate divine abilities. As for this little monkey, he held a deep affection for him and genuinely wished to take him as a disciple, not wanting to force the matter. Chapter 44. Merging the Lu Er bloodline. System upgrade. 20. Tong Yi soon realized that his concerns were entirely unfounded. With a thud, the Lu Er monkey, having grasped the essence of his words, promptly knelt before him, dropping to both knees. With resounding bows, he prostrated himself, and before Tong Yi could react, the ritual of 3 prostrations and 9 kowtows was complete. The disciple pays homage to the master. Just a moment ago, the audacious 6-eared macaque stood defiantly, ready for battle. Now, however, it kneels submissively on the ground, gazing up at Tong Yi with innocent eyes, its voice soft and tender. This scene elicits a shake of the head from Tong Yi. Were it not for his insight into the tricks of the six-eared macaque, he would undoubtedly be deceived by its adorably foolish facade. Was this how he appeared in Hong Jun's eyes back then? How embarrassing. Unbeknownst to Tong Yi, at this moment, the six-eared macaque is filled with joy, even experiencing a sense of relief. Why choose death when one can live? The reasoning is that simple. The instant the long-armed monkey appeared, the six-eared macaque realized it had entered a deadlock, especially upon witnessing the ease with which the large monkey subdued Fu Shi. It became painfully clear that it was time to reconsider its fate. The previous wager, after all, was merely a plan, one fraught with uncertainty. Yet now, the situation is entirely different. Not only can it avoid death, but it can also acquire other powerful bloodlines and take a master more formidable than Yuhua or Fu Shi. What need does it have for the six-eared macaque bloodline? From the moment of its birth, it understood that the six-eared lineage was incomplete and, in fact, a burden. Thus, taking a master now benefits both parties. With this thought, the six-eared macaque eagerly urges Tong Yi, "Master, please reclaim the six-eared bloodline." "Good," Tong Yi replies with a smile, raising his right hand to rest upon the forehead of the six-eared macaque. The macaque, licking its lips nervously, closes its eyes. Although it understands that this benefactor has no reason to slay it, there remains a lingering fear of an accidental misstep. Observing the macaque's demeanor, Tong Yi adopts a serious expression, his eyes half closed. Concurrently, the forces of spatial laws and divine consciousness converge, enveloping the entirety of the six-eared macaque. After half an hour, having thoroughly swept through the bloodline multiple times to ensure absolute certainty, Tong Yi feels a shift within himself. Shatter. Ding. Successfully shattered the six-eared macaque bloodline. Ding. Feedback received. Six-eared macaque bloodline. With the sound of the notification, the six-eared macaque's eyes widen in shock, blood spewing from its mouth as all 6 ears burst, transforming into a mist of crimson. It manages to emit a single cry of anguish before collapsing unconscious, its aura waning to an extreme, vitality rapidly draining away. Indeed, it was not so simple. Tong Yi cradles the six-eared macaque in his arms, his brows furrowed tightly. Despite having calculated this numerous times, the bloodline is intrinsically linked to the foundation. The sudden loss of the bloodline will undoubtedly damage its foundation. He hastily summoned his magical energy to seal the wounds of the six-eared macaque. Simultaneously, he flipped his right hand, and a cerulean orb suddenly appeared in his grasp. The very essence of the Kunpeng's bloodline, a treasure that would incite frenzy among the celestial beings. Without the slightest hesitation, Tong Yi pressed it against the macaque's forehead. For this was a debt he owed. Anxiously, he implored within his heart, "Use it. System, activate it for him." As the orb melded into the macaque's forehead and vanished, the life force that had been steadily ebbing away stabilized and began to rejuvenate. The ghastly wounds on either side of its face swiftly healed, scabbing over and sprouting new flesh until a pair of fresh ears emerged. Watching the pain gradually dissipate from the little monkey's face, ultimately succumbing to a tranquil slumber, Tong Yi finally exhaled in relief. The ordeal had been perilous, yet the outcome was favorable. Moreover, he sensed that the six-eared macaque's comprehension of the wind laws remained intact, having not transformed into a mere koan. The only concern was that its cultivation would need to be rebuilt. Fortunately, the macaque had only reached the earth immortal realm. With the infusion of the Kunpeng bloodline, restoration would come swiftly. Well, at least it's still a monkey, otherwise it might not have endured. Tong Yi murmured softly as he placed the six-eared macaque upon a massive stone. He then executed the 9-palace step, inscribing array runes with each step, and in an instant, established a formation in that very spot. Casting the 9 heavens true fire into the array's core, a 9-palace true fire array was thus completed. After this, Tong Yi employed the power of the space law to lay a circle of spatial traps around the formation. Within these traps, he harnessed the thunder law to coalesce several bolts of lightning. Once these tasks were accomplished, he suspended the Hongming Liangxianxi above his head for immediate action should the need arise. Then, he sat cross-legged and retrieved an orb of light. "Use." Tong Yi intoned silently in his mind. In an instant, the orb sank into his forehead and vanished. The bloodline of the six-eared macaque began to fuse with his own bloodline of the universal monkey. Buzz. Unlike the six-eared's absorption of the Kunpeng bloodline, a ripple suddenly emerged behind Tong Yi. Roar. The next moment, a colossal ape's phantom quietly materialized from the ripples behind him. It flickered in and out of existence, its eyes transcending time and space, gazing at Tong Yi with a look of quiet satisfaction. Beep. Detection indicates successful fusion of 2/3 of the bloodline of the Chaos Demon Ape. The system is commencing an upgrade. Simultaneously, the system's notification resonated in Tong Yi's mind. Yet, he had no inclination to heed it, for he could distinctly feel the powerful surge of bloodline energy coursing through his body. A thunderous roar reverberated within him as the two-thirds bloodlines intertwined and clashed. Each impact seems to reshape both his corporeal form and ethereal essence. This ongoing transformation compels him to remain vigilant. As time progresses, with each intertwining of bloodlines, the colossal shadow of the great ape behind Tong Yi gradually solidifies, its ancient and resounding aura continuously ascending. In the external realm, the Nine Palaces' true fire array autonomously circulates,